Let's get down to brass tacks. Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are on a Monday night, ready to rock and roll. And I've got my good friend, an amazing lady, and an amazing part of our community. Miss Rachel's in the house. What's going on, Rachel?
Doing good. Looking forward. So today for my theme earrings, we have Ghostface. So I thought we're discussing slashes. Then I've got to have my Ghostface earrings. So they're the ones on theme for today.
All right, all right. I love it. I love it. Very cool. For you guys, that was you caught me with that one. For you guys in the chat, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. A blanket hello to all of you guys. We got Jerry and Paula hanging out with us. What's going on? We got RJ in the house. What's up, RJ? Kay, and we got Jean saying hello. Hey, Jean. Hope you're doing well. Good to have you here. So tonight we were going to do something a little bit different. Hey, Jack, we're going to do something a little bit different. Um, we're going to be talking about obviously slashers, the slasher subgenre, which has been such a big part of horror. And for me personally, it's been so special in my journey through horror. As a matter of fact, it was a slasher film that got me started on my horror journey. So what I wanted to talk about, and if you know, you know. If you know what that film is, you know. Um, but I wanted to give us the opportunity tonight, Rachel and I, along with you guys here in the live chat, to talk about what makes a good slasher movie, and to possibly, and I'll just tease this, to possibly kind of build the structure of our own slasher film, the components that we would want. So that'll be something special, and get some interaction with you guys in the audience. But let me start with you, Rachel. Um, and you had no idea what we were doing tonight. I did that on purpose. One, for the fun of it. Two, because in my opinion, and I honestly mean this, you're such a sharp person when it comes to talking film, and I know your love of horror. So my question to you to start off is, what does the slasher subgenre mean to you, and how is it a part of your horror journey?
Say this straight up. Slashers are actually my favorite subgenre of horror. It used to be supernatural horror, but they have just overtaken. So similar. So the first horror I ever saw was not a slasher. It was actually the 1990 It. I was way too young. Should not have seen that. But when I started to actually really get into horror, slashers were some of the earliest films I saw, especially because I was off that age where I was a teenager in the early 2000s. So I had all of the post Scream movies to really fall in love with. So I do remember watching Scream so early on in my career, in my horror career. I remember I went into that not knowing that Drew Barrymore didn't survive. And so that was such a gut punch because, coming out of the 90s with Ever After and Charlie's Angels having just came out, like, and then I watched Scream and I was like, oh my God, why would you kill off Drew so early? Like, that was
Right.
such a shock to me. And then, I got into I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, The Faculty, all of those. And I really love slashes because I think they are one of the funner horror genres. Like horror can do a lot. And we've talked about that. You can get very cerebral with horror. But what I like about slashers is they do tend to remain light, but the good ones will always have a little something extra. So, for example,
Mm,
A Nightmare on Elm Street, your killer is killing you in dreams. It's still a slasher, but it's a slightly different take. Scream
mhm,
had the meta angle. Most recently, you had the Fear Street trilogy, which had like a whole mystery behind it of like what's wrong with the town. So I think the best slashers have that little something extra, either a mystery or a supernatural element that just make them so much fun. I think slashers also, I think a lot of people start with slashers because a lot of people do start horror in their late teens, because that's usually
mhm.
when you start to get interested in watching films that might scare you. And I mean, it's not always, but 90% of slashers are teens and young adults. So it's
Right.
definitely a genre, a good gateway for young people who want to get into horror. It's a good gateway for them. And you also get like some really fun characters. And of course, you
Mhm.
get the final girl trope from slashers. Like, obviously, you do have final girls that you can say in other movies, but the final girl trope mostly came from slashers. You had
Right.
the early 70s girls like Sally Hardesty and Jess from Black Christmas, and of course, Laurie Strode. And I love a final girl. Final girls are such a great trope. And I think that's one of the reason actually that so many women gravitate towards horror. It's one of the few genres where women are in the forefront, and slashers in particular, it's usually the girls getting shit done while the boys are being useless. Like we all know my tirade about Glenn in The Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes. Yes, you had one job, Glenn.
Had one job, Glenn. And a lot of the Friday the 13th boyfriends are crap. We talked a bit about that when we were doing our couple
Paul.
rankings. Paul,
He
just
can't fight. I'm telling
oh,
you.
Kenny, just
If
you've
you're
always got. Oh yeah.
if you go out into the woods and you got your girl out there, you better be ready to do some stuff. That's all I gotta say.
So yeah,
Anyways.
that is why I love the slasher genre. There's just so much that it encompasses, and I do think it does get a bit written off as stupid, like killer with a knife hunting stupid teens, which I
Yeah.
get. If you look at like the late 80s and the early 90s, and you look at
Yes.
some of the films that came out, I do get that, but it
Yeah.
is so much more. And the really good slashers, the ones that have stood the test of time, they always have a little bit something extra to them, which I really love.
I absolutely agree with you on that, and it's a very interesting um, journey that you've had with slashers, and I think a lot of us have had that type of journey, very similar, and I appreciate that because I think that horror itself goes through different cycles. And one thing I also wanted to touch upon before we start to talk about what makes a good slasher movie and possibly even creating at least the structure of our own slasher movie, one thing I wanted to talk about is this. Do you think today, obviously 2025, that the slasher film is well, first of all, let me put it to you this way. What do you think is the state of the slasher film today? Because, of course, for us growing up and generations, a little bit older and maybe even a little bit younger, I think we grew up at a time where the slasher subgenre was very strong. It was very commercially successful and so forth because of movies obviously that you mentioned, and we all know some of the top rated ones. But what do you think is the state of the slasher film today in 2025?
Do you think that slashes have fallen a little bit by the way, especially in the last 10 years when we've had a lot of what they like to call elevated horror, which I never like that term. To me, horror
Yeah.
has always been elevated. It's always done that kind of let's go beneath the surface. But I think the last group of films that came out that really made me feel like, oh my God, this is the slasher genre come back to life briefly, were the Fear Street trilogy, which came out in 2021, because they felt
Hmm.
so organically slasher. And I think being set in the 90s helped that. So I know that there have been films that have come out in the last few years that you could technically class as a slasher, like X, or, like Pearl and Maxine, like that. We had the
Hmm.
Texas Chainsaw, revive.
Hey, well, look, man, at least we actually had a Texas Chainsaw Massacre in it.
That is
Finally.
true. That is so true. But I
No.
swear that bus scene, oh my goodness, just
You're gonna get canceled,
let's
bro.
Let's cancel Leatherface. Oh god. I saw an edit
Mm.
where someone had put that to, like, the Venga Boys We Like to Party, and it worked so well, and I was like, "Why wasn't this the actual movie?"
Ah.
Yeah, Jim made a good point. You have, like, the Terrifier films as well, but again, Terrifier to
Yeah,
me is a little too extreme. When I think slasher, I feel like they should be accessible to people. So ones like Scream, and I know we did last summer. I think Terrifier is what you do once you're in the horror genre. Like you don't want to start someone off with Terrifier, do you? Like
right,
if you were going
right.
to introduce them to the
You
slasher genre,
you gotta ease them in.
you gotta ease them in. But yeah,
Yeah,
I do think it has been a little bit lost, and I do think that is because at the moment, I think horror is going through a bit of an upheaval. You know, we just had all of, like I said, the elevated horror, and I think we're trying to work our way out from that into making a bit more fun. Like there have been some
yeah,
great horror films that have come out in recent years, but they do slashes are fun, if you know what I mean. Like it's really
yeah.
fun to watch them. Whereas some of the more intense films that have come out recently, like Nosferatu or The Substance, great watches, like absolutely fantastic films, but they're not exactly films that you put on to feel good or you put on to like as a like
Right.
I like sometimes I'll describe Scream as like a comfort movie, which I know sounds really weird, but it's
Mhm,
true because you know all of the elements that add up. Whereas these new films, it's like you watch them once and they don't have that rewatchability. That's I should have mentioned that. I think slashers have the highest rewatchability of like horror films. Like they're the films that you rewatch a lot and a lot and a lot. Other films, because they have like a heaviness or they might have stuff that's a little too intense, you don't want to rewatch them, but you do want to rewatch slashers. So I do think that slashers have been a little bit forgotten about, and the ones that we're
mhm,
getting are not 100% what we're used to from slashers, at least not from, you know, the I would say from 80s to the early 2000s. You know,
mhm,
that's when you look at all the slashers from there, that's what I think of when I think slashers. And like I said, the only films that have come out in say the last 5 to 10 years that make me think that sort of slashers has been the Fear Street trilogy. And so
mhm,
I do think that yeah, I would really like to see more slashers come in, you know, be put up on screen, and to odd ones that do slip in, like Freaky or um Ready or Not. I have too many names
yep.
going around in my head. You know, they can be good, but yeah, no, slashers, I would love to see a revival like we saw in like the late 90s and early 2000s. I think we're ready for it. What do you reckon, Knight?
Well, and I agree with so much of what you say because I think that the slashers in general aren't at their peak any longer. But you do have some new movies that were inspired by a lot of those classic slashers, and you can kind of see a little bit of the through lines. What's been interesting to me is in the late 2010s, we had the revival of Halloween, and we also had obviously the newer Scream films, and it's almost like it was almost like that door was being opened again, but we haven't seen a lot of those type of slashers that we're talking about, which begs the question, can we go back to that, or even should we? I think there's a certain charm to a lot of these slasher classics that we've talked about. um so do you think, and for you guys in the chat too, I mean, do you think we can kind of go back to that classic type of slasher, or should we move forward? Because like you said, we've got films like the Terrifier films that is obviously going in a much more extreme path. It's not for everyone, but for some folks, it is absolutely kind of a return to form for slasher films. Do you think we can go back to that charm that we had, and should we?
Wish we could. I'm not sure that we can. I mean, media in general is in such a weird state at the moment. Everything's,
Mhm,
you know, between streaming and cinema not being as big as it used to be and TV becoming more like movies, everything is very weird and a little bit off at the moment. I
mhm,
think there's room to recapture that magic. I think like because I think I loved Halloween 2018. I meant to say when I should clarify when I said before that no slashes have come out that remind me of like old slashes. I meant to say like new slashes. Obviously, we
right.
have the continuing Scream films and Halloween, but they
Yep.
are already established fandoms, you know? Like
Yes.
it's been a long time, I think, since we've had like a Michael or a Freddy. I mean, I know that Art the Clown gets a little bit of like he is becoming a bit of a modern, antagonist, but I feel like it's been a while since we've had, that Freddy, that Jason, that Ghostface come in. And I think recapturing that magic could be hard. I mean, because especially because, and slashers do, I mean, people don't take into account, but slashers do. Horror movies often reflect the climate of the world. If you look at like the
Yes.
70s, it was very much, you had The Last House on the Left, which was, a commentary on Vietnam, and you had Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was not only Vietnam, but like meat packing industry and all of that was going on. And then, the 90s with, the oversaturation of media. And then we even started to work it in with like social media. So movies always reflect the times, and we are living in very uncertain times. So I think it's hard to kind of see where movies are going to go and how horror is going to reflect the fact that we're kind of living in a modern day horror film as it is. So it's like, and that's why I think the movies that I felt have recaptured that slasher magic, the Fear Street trilogy, which I know I keep mentioning, but I think it's a very underrated trilogy that doesn't get enough love. It
Hmm.
it set it in the 90s, and a lot of its stuff was shout out to like Scream movies, and its second part was very much based on Friday the 13th. I think maybe the only
Hmm.
way we can get the magic is through homages and that sort of thing. And I think there is room to make those homages without being a copy and paste. Like I think the Fear Street
Yeah.
trilogy, which is, to be fair, they are based on books, but I think that
Hmm.
that trilogy, did something new while also managing to capture the magic. But that might have just been lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get that and then it goes on. So I think at the moment where we are just with the real world climate, I think we're in a very uncertain space for all media. And I think horror in particular, because it so very much reflects modern times. I
Hmm.
just don't know. I think there's room to
Good point.
recapture the magic. I think people are keen for it. I think the horror fandom would really respond very well if we started to get some really original new slashes.
Hmm.
But I just don't know if the movie industry is ready to do that or if they're ready to make that sort of commentary. So I think we're in a very in between place at the moment. And it's just going to be interesting to see what the next couple of years do produce.
I absolutely agree. It's going to be very interesting. And real quick, too, just to catch up to the chat, I know that I'm very far behind, but we'll try to get to as many comments as we can. We can't get to everyone, but let me just say, hey to Julie in the house, saying I love to hate on Paul. You know it. You know it.
Paul is
What
Knight's Glenn.
pretty much he
Yep.
he is. What's up to Frank, and we got Scott and Jim, all you guys that have come in. Thank you so much for being here, and we've got Ben coming in with a $20 super chat. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Ben. What's going on, bro? Hope you're doing well tonight. And he's saying, "Night, Rachel. I'm so excited about this live stream. This may be a hot take, but Art the Clown deserves to be on the Mount Slashmore beside Michael Myers, Jason, and Freddy Krueger. Terrifier forever." Wow. Now, look, let me just, and I've talked about this a little bit, and Rachel, I'll get your thoughts on it in a second. I've talked about this quite a bit. I mean, you got three of them right. You got three of them right. You got to have Michael, Freddy, and Jason, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I've asked some folks and even some content creators that are friends and so forth. I'm always curious what people think. But in my opinion, just totally my opinion, I don't think there's any way that you couldn't have those three on that mountain for
Hmm.
everything that they've done, and in some cases continue to do for horror. I think you can't even debate it. The question always comes in, who's number four? In my opinion, the question is always, who could be number four? Now, I've said it's got to be Ghostface. And the reason for that is because of the legacy of Scream. Now, that's not to say I don't have respect for, some people say Leatherface, some people say Chucky's number four. And obviously some people like Ben tonight saying that Art is number four. And I will say Art is working towards iconic status, in my opinion, working towards it, because you got three films, not including, the shorts, so he's getting more material, but I just think it's going to be a little bit more time. And I will also say that as much as I enjoy the Terrifier films, like you said earlier, Rachel, it's not for everyone because of how extreme it is. And that's no knock on it, but I'm just saying that's something that I think will kind of always be a sticking point. Rachel, what do you think about the Mount Rushmore or the Mount Slashmore of horror?
I'm definitely on board with these 3 being, like, absolute, yes, you have to have these 3. I mean, they are iconic. They're the horror movie villains that people who don't watch horror know about. Like,
Yeah.
your average person will know Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason. Yeah, definitely those 3. They have done, like, I mean, so much for horror, so iconic, still going to this day. There's something there for everyone. Almost every horror fan will have one of these 3 in their favorites,
Hmm.
and so definitely completely iconic. 100% agree with those 3. I personally would put Ghostface as the 4th one. I mean, we all know how much I love Scream, but I also
Hmm.
think that Ghostface is another one who is so iconic that your average someone who's never even seen a horror film would know who Ghostface is. Whereas I do
Hmm.
know that, Leatherface, Pinhead, Chucky, these are great names. These are names that people know, but I don't think they're quite as iconic as Ghostface is. I just think that
Hmm.
Ghostface has really earned his title. And for me with Ghostface, I love Ghostface because you never know who's under the mask. So I think he's just so unique in that
Hmm.
sense. But yes, as for Art the Clown, as I've talked before, Terrifier is a little too extreme for me, and I'm not a clown fan. So I personally have not seen the Terrifier films, but I do have respect for how Art has made his way into the Hollywood zeitgeist in like such a short time. Like
Yeah.
he is very iconic. And I've said this before, he's managed to become this iconic character in such a short time. Whoever
Hmm.
plays him looks like they are having the time of their lives. Like I've seen clips and I've seen little bits here and there, but I
Hmm.
don't think he's iconic enough. I think he's still too new. Give it another
Hmm.
decade, see how he's doing, see where his franchise is at, and we'll go from there. But I
Hmm.
definitely have respect for the Terrifier films and for Art as a character that they've managed to become so known and so iconic in such a short time. But I'm with you.
Absolutely.
I reckon we put Ghostface up there on Mount Slashmore. By the way, I love the name. That is great. Mount Slashmore. That's so
Yeah, that
good.
is really good. Ben is good at that type of stuff. He
That's
knows.
brilliant.
Ben, thank you so much for that super chat, and we're gonna play a clip for you in a second. And also, I want to say this too, not to keep ranting on it, but you know, it, again, that fourth position is where I think some folks start to have the conversation. And I think a lot of people, obviously, the Scream franchise is very popular, so I know there's a ton of horror fans that would say, yeah, Ghostface should be number 4. In my opinion, the only other villain or iconic horror villain that could possibly be in that conversation, and it's not necessarily my favorite choice, but Chucky. I mean, Chucky has a popularity since the 80s.
That is true.
1988 is when
Mhm,
Child's Play came out, and he's
mhm.
still going strong.
True,
He's
true.
tons of movies. He's on TV. He's marketable. He talks. The kids are afraid of him. The adults are afraid of him. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I think as much as I'm a fan of Leatherface, as much as I'm a fan of Candyman, as much as I'm a fan of the Tall Man, who, by the way, is criminally underrated. Rest in peace to Angus Scrimm. 5 movies over the course of 35 years or so. Crazy that most people don't even know who the hell the Tall Man is. You guys got to watch some horror movies. But I think popularity wise, Chucky might be the only person um, that is kind of right behind Ghostface. Not necessarily my own choice, but just if I look at it, from an outside perspective because of his longevity. Um, Ben, thank you so much for that super chat. And before we play a clip, another thing that's really, really cool is when you have someone that makes a big surprise, and we got David joining the channel membership tonight. Thank you so much, David. We appreciate that. Welcome back to the inner circle, the watchers. We appreciate the support. It helps us to do what we do, and streams such as this. Thank you so much, man. We appreciate the support. It means a lot. And Julie, thank you for putting the link in the chat. If you'd like to become a channel member, you can click that link that Julie has in the live chat, or you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We have a lot of exclusive streams that we do, and we got some cool stuff coming up. But let's play a clip for Ben and for David for all of their support, which we appreciate so much. And um, Rachel, sometimes you think that you're going to get a certain amount of calmness and relief, and it might turn into this.
Да нажимай просто!
Did
Do you
did you see did you see what the guy did? He couldn't hold it in anymore, and he just oh, Lord. Alright. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you as well, David. We appreciate all the support. It helps us out, so very much. Okay, so le let's do this, Rachel. Let's talk about some specifics, and this is totally just for fun. We're kind of spitballing this, and for you guys in the chat, let us know what you think. We will not be able to get to everyone's input, but if you do send in a super chat, as you just saw with Ben, we'll make sure we get to your comment, suggestion, or question. Okay, so Rachel, let's talk about what makes a good slasher movie, like some of the elements. I'm going to bring up our little page here so we can kind of keep track and hopefully be able to share this with the audience watching. Now, let's start with you. Obviously, what do you think is maybe like the first element that would be considered as an important aspect of what makes a good slasher film?
First and foremost, you need a good killer. So you need a killer who is either going to he obviously your killer needs to be intimidating. Charisma
Hmm.
helps, but you don't always have to have a charismatic killer. And you need a killer who is going to have something that the audience can latch onto and then run with. So, like we were just talking about, Freddy, obviously, the nightmare, the quipping, the Robert Englund under all that makeup just being amazing. Jason and
Hmm.
his iconic mask and his machete and all the dumb teenagers that he manages to take out for us. Ghostface with his phone calls and his stalking, and you never know who's underneath the mask. So I think that, yeah, so first, and Michael, obviously, with the fastest slow walk ever and his horrifying mask and all of the poor mechanics who are dying to dress him every single movie, so feel so bad for these poor mechanics who are always dying just so Michael can have his jumpsuit. It's
Right,
just
right, right.
ridiculous. But yeah, so that's I think your first big thing is. And I think the slashes that people tend to be a bit iffy about, or the ones that are not as well remembered, they've got the killers that are not as great. Like I know Shit Last Summer. We do love that movie, but like Hook Man, he's not that great. He's moonlighting as a hairdresser and leaving fish in people's boots. Like he's not really that scary. So
Yeah.
that that's what I think is your first thing is, yes, the killer. What would you say is the first one for you, Knight?
Well, I think to me, and of course I can't pull this up, so we'll just remember these things and I'll
Okay.
jot them down on a piece of paper. But I think for me, the, the first thing, and this is not in any particular order, at least that's not how I was thinking of it. But I think that you have to have a really good story, you know,
True.
like,
Mhm.
and what I mean by that, I'm not talking about that it's like going to be Academy Award winning or anything like that, but I mean just a story that kind of is just interesting to you. And a lot of times that will be what carries you through the whole film. Like I've
Mhm.
seen some slasher films, and again, guys in the chat, we're talking specifically slasher films, but I've seen some slasher films where maybe the killer, well, you just mentioned it yourself with I know what you did last summer. Like the killer was fine, it wasn't anything great, but it wasn't anything horrible to me. But the story was what kind of carried me through that film. And I know there are a lot of folks, I mean, we're not necessarily going to be rating films per se, but I know some folks that they really enjoy. I know what you did last summer, and some that aren't big on it. But I think that, excuse me, I think that what was interesting about it as a horror film, as a slasher film, was the story. The story, which is very, I mean, it's not anything special, but I thought it was an intriguing story. So for me, I think I would start specifically with the story, what's going on in the film, what's drawing me in. So right now, we've got two things. We've got the killer and we've got the story. What would be, if there is another thing that comes to your mind about what we need?
follow on from the story because I actually just thought as you were talking about it, I was thinking of different slashers. I've noticed that some of the best slashers have a mystery. Like, like you mentioned, I know she's last summer. That's a good one. That's why you keep watching because you want
That's
to
right.
know who they hit, who is coming after them, who is this guy, who are his friend, who is Crazy Anne Heche. So you have all of that.
I almost forgot about her.
She is so great in that movie. I swear she's like an underrated gem out there chopping her fish heads off and yeah.
Yes.
Well, the Scream movies, they always have a mystery. The A Nightmare on Elm Street, you had the mystery of who was Fred Krueger, what did the parents do to him? So yeah,
Yes.
some of the best slashers, even urban legend. Why are we using urban legends? Why are they coming after us? The Fear Street trilogy had like a mystery that went through all three films of who is Sarah Fear and why is she coming after the
Yes.
town. So yeah, I think that going on from story, yeah, I think mystery. So that's just a little thing I wanted to add. I do think some of the best slashers, they're murder mysteries. I think that's what hooks people and drags them in. So we talked
Okay.
about killers. Look, good characters, and I think this is something that gets overlooked in horror in slasher films so much. And again, I kind of blame the late 80s for this because they did start we did start to get a lot of the stupid brain dead teenagers being killed by killer in the late
Yes.
80s.
That's
So
right.
I do blame the 80s slightly for that. But again, if you look at the best the slasher movies, the ones that are really remembered, they have fantastic characters and not just in their final girls. Like whenever we've talked about Scream, everyone wants to talk about Dewey and Gail and
Yes.
Stu and this. There's so many great characters. Halloween as well. We talk about Laurie's ridiculous friends. We all love the sheriff. We all love Laurie and the Nightmare on Elm Street. We love all the girls. We hate the boys because the boys are stupid, but the girls are always great. So again, if you've got really great characters and of course a really great final girl, I think that's great. But no, I think people do tend to write slashes off, and so they say, oh, they're just brain dead characters, and it's like, look, that is true for some, but again, the ones that stand the test of time, the ones that
Hmm.
everyone remembers, they have like the really great characters and the characters that you can root for and that you don't, you actually care when they get killed off as opposed to cheering on Jason when he's smacking a sleeping bag around.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think, yeah, you've got to have some really good characters and a really good central character, usually a final girl, but obviously you've got some different, you've got like Final Destination, which has Alex as, a final
Yep.
boy and a few others. So as long as you've got that good central character and a good supporting cast of characters, that's definitely needed for a good movie in general, but particularly a good slasher because you
Yeah.
want to feel for these kids as they die. You want to be feeling for Tina as she's up on the ceiling, and you want to feel for Tatum as she's stuck in the garage door. You don't want to be watching and just going, oh, just another dead teenager, whatever. You want to be like, no, Tatum, stop.
Right, right,
You
right.
want to be like that. So yeah, good characters I think are a must.
Okay, so far, so we've got a killer, we've got a story, we've got a mystery, and we've got characters. Okay, so we got four elements so far. I'm gonna give my next one, but before I do that, real quick, we got a channel member anniversary for Hollywood Guy, 16 months.
Excellent. Awesome.
Very cool. Thank you so much for all the support. Saying my fourth one would be Pinhead. Yes, he's not that scary, but he is recognizable. But I would put art in there too. All right. So, again, we have some folks that are big on art, or obviously in this case, Pinhead. The thing for me, Pinhead is very recognizable. And again, there's an argument that could be made for Pinhead. I love, and especially Doug Bradley is he's an icon. He's an absolute legend. But if you've been around this channel long enough, you know how I feel as we hit Hellraiser 4 in space.
Yeah.
Because you do
He's
nobody.
just hanging out with Jason.
Bro, listen. He's a demon from hell. Why do you need to go to space, bro? You've got a whole place that you're just chilling in. Anyways,
Oh dear.
I have fun with this, but to me, I think Hellraiser 4 is a huge drop off in the franchise, and they started to go to direct to video. I was not a fan of it. When we went to the convention 2 years ago, and it was basically a Nightmare on Elm Street reunion, and we got the chance to meet all of them, and it was really cool. But specifically Kim Myers from Nightmare 2, Freddy's Revenge. and she was so lovely. And here I am basically melting in front of her. Coriander's laughing at me, and I said to her, she was in Hellraiser 4, and I said, "You know what? You were the best thing in Hellraiser 4." And she laughed her ass off and she thanked me. And she took the the joke, as it wasn't a joke against her, but she took it so well. um I just think that they just got to the point where they weren't even Pinhead wasn't even really integral to those movies, which I have an issue with. And they surprisingly got back on track with the I believe it was Hulu, whatever, the latest movie, which was kind of like a reimagining, which I thought was actually really good. I was very surprised on that. So, anyways, I say that to say I wouldn't put Pinhead as number 4, but I can understand, a lot of the fans of the movies or of him that would think that as a possibility. But thank you so much, Hollywood guy. We appreciate all the support and also the comment. Let me just catch up a little bit here. And also, Julie, thank you for doing all the links. She's got the link to Rachel's channel. So, obviously, if you're not subscribed to Rachel, make sure you guys do that. We got the link here in the chat multiple times, and we'll have the link in the description as always. Let's see. We've also got. It was a rabbit hole, Ben. He's like, he's glad that his super chat sparked the rabbit hole. Absolutely, man. And thank you so much, Ben. Seriously, much appreciated to all that you do. All that you do. Thank you. Thank you. So my next idea or next aspect, and let me just put this up on the screen so we can kind of keep track a little bit now that we can actually share it, which is a good thing. StreamYard sometimes makes things a little challenging. Okay. So we've got the killer, we've got the story, we've got the mystery, we've got the characters. My next aspect that I think is very important is that it has to be scary. It has to be scary. And again, that's a concept that for, one person to the next can be very different. Like what scares one person may not scare another, and that's perfectly okay. But I think to some degree, this slasher film has to put a chill inside of you, or make you think, wow, that would really be something if it really happened, or what have you. What do you think of that, Rachel? Do you think that having that fear or that scare factor is important?
Absolutely. I mean, I can
Mhm.
still remember the first time I saw Halloween, and I literally could not look out the window. Like, seriously, I lived in like this tiny little granny flat in someone's garden. There was no chance of Michael Myers getting in there, and I still would not look out the window because I was so terrified. It was, oh my God, it got me in my soul, that movie. But no,
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And the way I measure whether a movie is scary these days or not, because obviously when you watch so much horror, you unfortunately get desensitized, which I really hate because I love being scared. Like it's, horror is like my version of going on a roller coaster. Like that's what I would watch. But like I now measure it with if I'm watching a slasher, how much I start to like my heart starts to pound. Like I tend to get stressed now more than
Mhm.
scared. So if I'm watching a movie and I'm like bunched up in a ball going, "Oh my God, this is so stressful. What's gonna happen?" That's a sign of a good slasher. So absolutely. I mean, it's a slasher film, but it's still under horror. Your aim is still to scare. And
Yes.
you can have some like slasher is one of the subgenres in horror where you can have a lot of fun, and comedy does tend to transfer over into slashes a bit. Like my
Mm.
absolute favorite horror comedy is Club Dread, which is a parody of slashers, and it just shows
Mhm.
how well the slasher genre lends itself to comedy. But I do think that can be a bit of a double-edged sword because yes, you do get slasher movies where unfortunately they forget the scares. Like you're watching the
Yeah.
movie and you're like, okay, this is fun. Like okay, like I think an example of one that I watched recently, not a recent movie, but I rewatched the 2009 version of My Bloody Valentine. And I'm
Mhm.
like, it's a fun movie, but even watching it back in the day, I wouldn't have been scared by it. Like it's not yeah, it's not very scary. So I agree. It definitely needs to be scary. It needs enough that like when you turn the movie off, you sit there going, "Oh no, what if
Right.
they're coming for me?" Like yeah,
Yeah.
definitely need a scare factor. And, so many of the ones that we have talked about do have that scare factor. Scream scared me when I first saw it. That
Mhm.
opening scene alone
Yeah. That
scared
was
the
great.
crap out of me.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And A Nightmare on Elm Street, of course. Like, that's one of the ones where afterwards, you're like, well, great. Now I'm never going to sleep again. Like, what am I
That's
supposed to do
right.
now?
Well,
I can't. Yeah.
it's funny you mention that because obviously 2 films by the late great master Wes Craven, and I think one thing about Wes, and we're gonna get into something I think will be a really fun part of this conversation too. The thing about Wes is that he always understood with a horror film, you've got to get that person on the roller coaster so
Mhm.
that you can scare the crap out of them. And as much as Scream has, the meta aspect, it has the comedic elements and over the top zaniness in its own way, it doesn't forget that it is a horror film and it has those moments that really just shake you up so
Mhm.
badly. And the
Mhm.
opening is a great example of that. It's like Wes understood, I've got to grab them right off the bat.
Yep.
I've
Mhm.
got to make
Yep.
sure that they understand that this is going to be a ride. And that opening is absolutely fantastic. And the same aspect or the same idea with Nightmare is that all of these things that are happening to Glenn and Nancy and Rod and Tina, like you start to parallel that to yourself and say, wow, like you said, I've got to go to sleep, oh my god, and you keep that one eye open because of that little bit of that scare factor inside. And I think that's so important. And when you don't have that, like you said, the My Bloody Valentine remake, which I agree, I think they didn't lean enough into the horror. That's when it kind of becomes a little bit more of just icing on the cake. It's fluff,
Mhm.
which is too bad. And I think the best slasher films, which we're going to talk about that as well, guys, so get yourselves ready. The best slasher films, in my opinion, at least the ones that I think are the best, they have that scare factor. They don't forget to scare you. You know what I'm saying? And that's so
Absolutely.
important. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Now, let me ask you this, and if you don't have another aspect, that's perfectly fine. Is there any other aspect that you would add to this list? We've got the killer, we've got the story. The story has to have a mystery. We have to have characters that we're invested in, and we're praying to God that it's scary. Any other aspects you want to add to it?
Just one, yeah, one more. And this, I think, is more important in slasher films than almost any other subgenre of horror. You need memorable kills. Now, they don't
Mm,
need to be gory. They don't necessarily need to be blood and guts, but they need to be memorable. So either the setup to the kill needs to be fantastic or the kill itself needs to be unique. So you think, again, you think about like the classics. Everyone remembers the opening scene in Halloween. Everyone
hmm.
remembers poor Annie getting strangled in the car because it's such a stark moment. Everyone remembers Tina on the roof. Everyone remembers Glenn in the geyser of blood. Everyone
Yep.
remembers Tatum getting stuck in the door. Everyone remembers Jason grabbing that sleeping bag and
Yep.
smacking that poor girl to death. Everyone remembers Kevin Bacon get stewed through the throat. Like, these are all kills that are so either like unique, like the Tatum one, or they have a great build up, like the opening to Halloween. So you
Hmm.
need those kills that people still talk about, that people still put on best kill lists. And obviously, the title says it all. They're slasher movies. Like I said, more than any other subgenre of horror, slasher movies, they need the kills that are memorable and that fans are going to talk about and just sit there and just go, oh my god, did that just happen? Like the first time I
Yeah.
watched Scream and I saw what was going to happen to Tatum, I was like, no, no, they're not going to do. Oh, no, they did. It was like, wow, they actually did that. So yes,
Right.
memorable kills are a must.
Okay. All right. Now, real quick in the chat too, we've got other folks jumping in. As always, a blanket hello to all of you guys. Thank you for joining us. Doom Turkey's in the house. What's going on? He's don't forget,
Hey,
Khan also went to space. How could we
why is
forget?
everyone going to space?
Nobody goes to space successfully except for
Oh.
Jason. He's the only one that could do it. It's crazy. We got
Oh.
Hollywood guy coming in with a super chat. Thank you so much, Hollywood guy. We appreciate that. Saying a good slasher needs a good opening kill, a story, characters, a main villain, and an arc. Like, why do I want to hate or like him? Very well said. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely agree with all of that. No doubt at all. Thank you so much for the super chat, man. We really appreciate that. And we'll do a clip for you in a little bit. Um, to me, another aspect, and this might be one that is a little controversial. Um, some folks may not see it as a necessity. And I'm not saying this is the most important thing. As a matter of fact, all these are not in a particular ranking or list of importance. But I think a good slasher film needs good music. I think it
Yes.
needs good music. Now, I'm not saying it has to be like, the most iconic piece of music of all time, but I do think that the score or the music really enhances everything that is going on. And for some of the greatest slasher films of all time, you can appreciate the music or the score that is in the film, and it actually enhances it. And we saw how that worked with Halloween specifically when
Oh, yeah.
Carpenter played it
Mhm.
without the music. And most folks were kind of like, whatever. And then when he added that iconic score, it changed everything for the people watching it, and it really does change it, because I've seen it both ways too. So I think music is also an aspect that sometimes people may not think about too much, but it's always there underneath, you know what I mean? Like it's almost a subconscious type of thing. You think about Elm Street. I mean, that score
Mhm.
is so creepy, so unique. Like I always just think of Freddy, and it's like dun 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 dun
So good. I'm getting chills just
dun.
like yep.
You
Mhm.
know? Shout out to
Yeah.
Heather Langenkamp's boyfriend, who I think actually, was a part of that, or was it I think it was the one, "Two Freddy's Coming for You." But
Was oh,
those are things that are so iconic, and I think it's definitely an aspect, that we need to have.
definitely.
For you guys in the chat, let us know what you think of these as well. Rachel, do we have any other aspects that come to mind that we would add to what makes a good slasher film? I think these are like a lot of the main ones, I would think.
These are the main ones, and I completely agree with you with regards to music, by the way. I
Mhm.
mean, the Halloween score, Scream, Marco Beltrami, that score. I
Yes.
mean, Trouble in Woodsboro, I have that on one of my Spotify playlists, and I listen to it, like, all the time. It is such a great piece of music,
Mm.
and he actually scored the Fear Street movies as well, and he did a fantastic job on those as well,
Mhm.
and it's just so great. So music, I definitely agree with. Um, I think we've got a pretty good grasp here. I will say, and again, I don't know if it's necessarily like it has to be in every slasher because there are slashers that don't open with a kill, but I think a
Yeah.
really good opening kill always helps, or at the very least, a really good opening scene. Like Nightmare, for example, doesn't have
Mm.
a kill in its opening scene. It's just, but it's
Right.
Tina's dream, and you do
Right.
at least get the threat of Freddy. But when you look at like Halloween and Scream, and these films just have that amazing kind of like open. And we always talk about like opening kills in movies. A lot of the Scream
Mhm.
films in particular have become very known for like who's going to be the opening kill. So again, I don't think that one's necessarily like you have to have it, but I do think that it definitely adds to it. But I think what we've
Mm.
got here, I think this is a pretty solid list of why. And if you look at like all the slashes that we love, they would have every single one of these aspects to
Yeah,
them.
I absolutely agree. And it's funny you just said the opening kill, and Hollywood guy had mentioned that as well. Here's my and let me know what you think about this, and you guys in the chat specifically, let me know what you think about this. I was actually thinking, and I do agree, an opening kill is very cool. And obviously the opening is important to the film because it starts you off. But to me, I was actually thinking of the finale. And
Actually,
because
yeah.
to me, and again, and this is all just conversation. We're just having some fun with this, but you guys let us know what you think, and Rachel, let me know what you think. I think the finale might even be more important in the sense of at least two things. Number one, how the story is wrapped up, and number two, how we get to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, is there a twist? Is there some type of shift in the story? Is there something that sets up to open up the mythology and what have you? I think, to me, and I'm not saying it's necessarily more important, but when I think of this list, I think that it's one of those things that, like, again, it sends you out on a high or sometimes a low. What What do you think,
No,
Rachel?
I until you mentioned it, I hadn't thought of it, but no, you're absolutely right. I do think the climax is the most important, if not the most important, but is one of the more important things. And you can have a slasher where you're having like a lot of fun and then you get let down by a lackluster
Yeah.
finale. And I'm gonna say, I know we keep dumping on this film. I do actually really love this film, people, but I Know What You Did Last Summer is another example of that, you know? We
Mhm.
finally get to like meet Ben and be on the boat, and then Julie and what's his face, Squarehead, just completely lose their minds and just acting like idiots.
Oh, you're ragging on my boy.
Freddie Prinze Jr., I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
love Freddie, okay?
Yeah.
Just he's got a very rectangle head. But yeah, so I think, I know she last summer, that's another great example, but no, I'm with you. I'm with you, Knight. You need that climax, that reveal, that kind of like how is the final girl going to get away from the killer?
Yeah.
What's going to happen during this finale? I mean, I think like Halloween, the finale, like the climax of Halloween is so good and has
Isn't
so
it?
many oh shit moments, like
Yeah.
I will forever love the sitting up behind Laurie, because you're with Laurie, you think, okay, he's gone, she's taken him down, and then you just
Yeah.
see it's like, oh no. And
Yeah.
Scream. I love the climax of Scream, because I love, you get the Billy reveal and poor Sydney's freaking out, and then she runs into Stu and you think, okay, good, good, and then he's just like, surprise, Sydney, and you're like, oh shit balls,
Yeah.
like it just
Yeah.
just keeps you on your toes. So yeah, no, I'm with you. Definitely need to have a good finale.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. All right. So these are the aspects we have. And guys in the chat, let us know what you think of these. Now, let's just say for a second, we're just gonna spitball this a little bit, Rachel. So this is totally not scripted or anything like that. Let's say, we're kind of putting all these aspects together, okay? And we're going to just look at these aspects and kind of go with them. Okay, this may not be perfect or whatever. It probably won't be. So when we talk about killer, let's start with killer. We're kind of making our own, not our own film per se, but some of the structure of it. Okay, so we have a killer. In your opinion, for a slasher film, and of course, we're obviously taking inspiration from things we like. But when you have a killer, what does that killer look like? I mean, not physically, but what type of killer do you think would be great in a slasher film? Like if we had a blank slate and you described the killer.
Gosh, I mean, I always love a mask. I have to
Okay,
admit, masks for
good.
me, because there's something about when you cannot see the eyes, and that's
Hmm.
why whenever you can see Michael's eyes in in one of his movies, I instantly get taken out of like the moment, because I'm like, no, for me, that mask
Hmm.
with the blackest eyes, you know.
Blackest eyes.
Yeah, so definitely, like, for all the my most memorable killers, with a couple of exceptions. You always have a couple of exceptions, but
Hmm.
Ghostface, Freddy, no, sorry, Jason, Michael. The mask is what makes them, and I really think that the masks works really well. I
Okay.
also love a killer with a backstory, which is kind of funny because my favorite killer is Michael Myers, who has no backstory, but I do love a killer with a backstory.
Okay.
He's been wronged, he's been killed by the vigilante parents, he killed his girlfriend's mother and now has come to kill her. I'm just saying, a backstory is always good.
Yeah.
Um, Give him a slow walk. The slow walks are always creepier, okay? Like if I've got Michael coming at me from one side and Ghostface coming at me from the other side, I'm taking my chances with Ghostface, okay?
Yeah.
Chances are
Yeah.
he's gonna trip over something or fall over his own feet. But Michael with that slow walk, he's
Yeah.
just never letting up, man. He's just
No.
coming for you.
No, it was so slow, and everybody who watches this channel, you guys know where I'm about to rant. It was just so slow. It was almost like this guy is like he's a science wizard. He's defying gravity, walking down the stairs. Shout out to Dick Warlock and Halloween 2 from '81. I'm like, wow, he's got all the time in the world. He can have a picnic. He can go and get his hair cut and then still come back and chase, or I should say, walk after Laurie Strode. This is crazy. But yes, the slow walk, it definitely it adds to Michael. It really does. And again, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill and all of those guys, you got to give them so much credit. Now, here's an interesting thing, and I like all of these aspects. I would say I agree. Matter of fact, excuse me, in my mind, I was thinking, yeah, we got to have a mask. The backstory, I totally agree with you that it makes it interesting, but it's ironic because Michael doesn't have one, and Michael is my second favorite killer. You know what I'm saying? So, but I agree, backstory is good. I think also he has to stand out. In other words, he's not just a guy dressed in black with like a black ski mask on. That's way too
Yes.
normal. I got to
Mhm.
have something to make him stand out a little bit. And the best of these killers do stand out, which is also, I want to make a quick little tangent because Hard Eyes is one of the newer films out that is trying to, I mean, I don't know if I'm saying they're trying to revitalize the slasher, but it's a slasher film that is new, and you can tell that it has a lot of inspiration. I know it's very new, and a lot of people haven't seen it, and I'm not going to go into any spoilers, but I have seen it. Coriander and I have seen it, and I think they did a lot of really interesting things. Most notably, when we talk about specifically the killer, like with this first aspect, I thought they did a great job. The killer is unique. He has the mask with those quote unquote heart eyes. In the film, there's a couple of times when you see how that works to his advantage. I won't say it because obviously if you haven't seen it, but it was cool. And I was like, okay, they have they've done their homework. They went to Genius University and they figured out how to make a killer look great. And so I appreciate that aspect of it. And I'm really hoping that Heart Eyes, that it could be, and I don't know how they would do it, but maybe it could be something new for the slasher subgenre. Just like with Thanksgiving, I can't wait to see what they're going to do with Thanksgiving too. And I pray that it is good because it is great to see new slasher films and these possible new slasher icons. So just throwing that out there for Hard Eyes. Um, okay, so when we go to story, Rachel, and of course we're not gonna like craft a whole story right now, but just maybe some basic ideas in a story if we're kind of putting together our own horror movie. Is there any aspect, it could just be one thing. Is there any part of the story that you think would make it great?
I think your central character, whoever that is, they need to have a proper arc. So whatever they're
Okay.
doing, like your other character's fine, but your story must mean that your main character goes through some sort of transformation. Like again, if you look at like Sydney, she
Hmm.
starts the story very traumatized, trying to get out from the trauma of her mother's death, and then she goes through this whole transformation of learning the truth about her mother, of learning the truth about the circumstances, wrestling with herself. Have I sent an innocent man to jail? Are the killers still out there? And getting to the resolution at the end when she finds out the truth and she realizes that she can move on. And of course, and I'll always say this: the first three films of Scream in particular have such a good arc for Sydney, and that final like shot of her in the third film is so good. So yeah, so
Yeah.
you have to have a character. So your main character needs to go through some sort of evolution, and they need to have a clear arc within the story. And of course,
Hmm.
we can link the mystery to that. Like I said, I always like a slasher with a bit of a mystery, a little
Hmm.
bit of a who done it, what's going on here. So that's what I would say. What about you, Knight? What would you want to have in your story?
I think that the story, it has to be universal, meaning like,
That's yes.
like obviously, and we're two great examples because we live very far apart.
Mhm.
Obviously, growing up in different circumstances, I grew up in the city, um, and what have you. So my life is, well, obviously it's my own, but it's not everyone's experience. But when I sat down on a cold, dark, stormy night to watch Friday the 13th about these people in the woods of New Jersey, I was able to understand it. I was able to put myself in their shoes because it was universal. You're talking about something happening when you're camping or in the woods. So I think that our story has to have some type of universal concept, whether it's where it's at or what's happening to the people. You know what I'm saying? Like in Halloween, it's Halloween time and there's trick-or-treaters and people are being festive in that sense. If you look at It's a Wonderful Knife, it's Christmas time, we're celebrating Christmas and so forth. So I think that it has to be universal in that sense. Okay. All right.
Go. Just me now. Think we lost Knight, guys. Well, hopefully he'll make his way back. I can see the cursor going.
Sorry about that. I hit the
There
wrong
we go. You're
button.
back.
Yeah, I hit the wrong button. Um, I just want to give a shout out to Val and to Gina in the chat. Oh,
Valagina.
all right. Um, okay, so now when we go to mystery, um, just maybe some type of aspect of the mystery. What do you think we need in this movie that we're putting together as far as what is part of the mystery?
I think it works best when the mystery links into our characters. Like, so for example, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy learns that one of the reasons that Freddy's coming after her and her friends is because her parents and the parents of Elm Street, decided to become vigilantes. So that directly links to the characters. I don't want to give too much away, but Fear Street does a really great job of linking the mystery to not only the characters, but the setting, the town, everything that's going on. So I
Hmm.
think you can't just have like a mystery that's just kind of running parallel. The mystery has to be involved with our characters and has to, convolve them. Although that being said, we don't always have to go too extreme. Like we did not need to make Laurie and Michael brother and sister. Like that was a mystery that
Right.
we didn't need to solve. So it needs to make sense and not be too padded, but also, yes, I think link into our characters. So I think that's the most important aspect.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think it has to, that enhances the character or
Yes.
characters. You know what I mean? So I think that is absolutely important. And I also think that the mystery, it has to. I'm not saying I'm not the wording I want to use, not saying it has to be good, but it has to have something that is like original. You know what I'm saying? Like, and of course, I guess original is a bad word as well because what's original now. But
True.
what I mean is the way that it's presented. You know what I'm saying? Like this whole idea in Scream, where Sydney is dealing, with the murder of her mother and how that affected her and the trauma that that brings. And ultimately, we find out as the movie goes along, and obviously at the end, that this is kind of a revenge type of situation. You know what I'm saying? Because of the wrongdoings that her mother made. So it's like all this trickle down type of things. And that's what I mean. It has to have some type of original way that it's presented, or maybe a crafty way. Maybe that's a better way to describe it, a crafty way that it's presented, that sticks with you because again, the mystery could be something that is so um important to the film. In other words, if your film has a mystery that you can figure out in 3 seconds, I think it lessens the film overall.
Yes. Hmm.
If it's a great mystery, if it has you on the edge of your seat till the end, it really, to me, enhances your viewing of that film. So I think it has to be crafty. I think it has to be crafty.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, when we get to characters, and let's have some fun with this. You guys in the chat, let us know as well. When we get to characters, what do good characters look like for this film that we're trying to put together?
My biggest complaint when it comes to characters in slasher movies, don't make them dumb. Please give us smart characters because, oh my God, if you have a dumb character, you lose all sympathy for them. As soon as a dumb character dies, it's like, well, you kind of brought this on yourself. Not to
Yeah,
victim blame or anything, but if you're being that stupid, so yes,
right.
please give us smart characters. So that's my first. Like, I'm not saying they have to be like uber smart and figuring everything out all the time, but like run out the front door, not up the stairs.
Yeah,
Sydney,
yeah. Even Sydney, one of the
even
greatest of all
Sydney.
time. Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. So, and then interesting. And again, we don't have to know every character's backstory for everything. But like I think again, Scream, especially the first movie, is such a good example. I mean, just look at the character of Tatum. Okay. We don't learn that much about her really. We know that
Right.
Dewey's her older brother. It looks like maybe their dad isn't around because we just see her mum, but she's so loyal to Sydney. We really see that come through. She's so protective of Sydney. She's
Yeah.
so outgoing and doesn't, is not afraid to say what she thinks. And you get all of this without really having to go that deep into the character. So, and of course, like Rose McGowan, like just elevates that performance so much. But like that's just a
Mhm.
great example. Or, characters with like a little bit of hidden depth, like the most recent Fear Street movies. There's a character in there who sells drugs and you think, okay, so she's just a drug dealer, but then you find out that she's selling drugs because she lives in a town where she doesn't have a lot of opportunities and she's saving up to go to college. So it's like, okay, so there's a little bit of depth there. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting with a little bit of depth. Not every character needs to have an insane backstory, but they do need to have enough that you are interested. And again, they don't even have to be likable. There are some really fun characters that are not likable in horror
Mhm.
movies. Like Laurie's two friends, bless them, in Halloween. Annie, not the most likable characters, but definitely entertaining. So
Yeah. That's
entertaining, interesting. Yeah, that's what I
that
think.
that's such a good point because as much as and of course when we talk about these films and talk about characters and so forth, like when you look at Linda and Annie, you're right. It's not like they're not like the most super likable of all time. I mean, obviously Linda is a lot more she just does her own thing. But Annie
Yeah.
especially can sometimes, she's just like ragging on Laurie. But I kid you not, and this is one aspect I want to add, and Annie is almost the perfect example. There has to be an it factor.
Yes.
And that could
Yes.
be and that
Mhm.
could be whatever for all of us. Sometimes it's charisma, sometimes it's the way that the character speaks, maybe
Mhm.
it's the way that the actor moves, maybe it's the way they look, it could be a thousand different things, but it has to have, or that character in our film has to have the it factor. And Annie is a great example because
She is. Yeah.
I love Annie. I kid you not, and I've talked about this when I talked about some of the saddest kills in the franchise. And I put her kill in there because it saddened me because I really enjoyed the character. I loved the character and anyways, so yeah, it factor I think is another aspect. Okay, now when we talk about that the film needs to be scary, what does that look like to you? At least maybe one example of what scary looks like for our film.
Atmosphere. A lot of it comes down to atmosphere. Like
Okay.
Halloween, for example, it wasn't the kills that scared me. It was Michael just lurking around the houses doing his slow walk through the neighborhood. That is
Mhm.
what scared me the most because the atmosphere, it's dark, the lights are dimmed, it's chilly, it's Halloween night, and then there's
Mhm.
some creeper just slow walking down your street. Definitely. And again, the opening to Scream is another great. There is so much atmosphere in that
Yeah.
opening scene. Drew on edge, all the way that Wes works the camera, the way he moves through the house so that you move with her. So I'll add to atmosphere suspense. Suspense,
Mhm.
obviously, you want suspense. You want to be scared for these characters. You want to feel like, oh my God, like they could just die at any moment and just, feel that tension coming through. So I would say
Mhm.
those are the two biggest ones for me. What about you, Knight?
I think that scary it should be something. There should be a primal fear. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Something that, and at least for me, and I'm not saying this has to be in every slasher film, but to me, something that maybe harkens back to your childhood. You know what I'm saying? Like when I think of like Friday the 13th, the thing that makes it scary to me, if we take all the other aspects out of it, whether it's Pamela or Jason, whatever, but the thing that makes it very scary to me is when you're in the woods at night. It's creepy for me. I'm just saying for me,
No, it is. Yeah.
like if I went to the woods right now as a full grown adult, um, I would be creeped out. I would be creeped out just because number one, it's dark. Number two, there's sounds throughout the woods or what have you. You don't necessarily know what's in front of you and so forth. So I think that, that's kind of a primal fear. It's a fear that I actually had as a kid. I think a lot of kids did is, afraid of the dark. I remember I used to have
Uh-huh.
to have my mother have the hall light on outside of my bedroom,
Yep.
up until
Uh-huh.
maybe I was like, I don't know, 7 or whatever. So I think that whatever this film that we're putting together is, it has to have a primal fear. Maybe it's a fear of the dark, maybe it's a fear of sleep, maybe it's a fear of death, maybe it's a fear of falling. I just think that that really enhances the scare factor because it's something that you can't really escape. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like right now, if this room was dark, and let's say I couldn't get out of it,
Yeah.
right? There would be a little creepiness to it. It
Mhm.
just would. I'm just being honest. I can be mad enough to say that. So, all right. So, you guys in the chat, let us know what you think of that. Okay. So, kills. We're talking about kills in our slasher film. What does that look like to you? We obviously have tons of examples of films of how they do it. From not very graphic at all to super graphic. What do our kills look like?
I would say I'm just trying to think because it's I'm trying to word how what I'm thinking. So the most memorable kills to me are
Mhm.
the ones that are either really original, like it's something you don't see coming. Like I said, like the garage door was one. There's also, okay, I won't give away the character, but I'm going to talk about the kill because it's so, so good. There is a kill in Fear Street where a character's head goes through a bread slicer. And it was one of the most interesting and original kills I had seen in so long. That I just went, holy shit, how did they even come up with this? What is someone just standing at home one day slicing bread and went, "Oh, hang on a sec."
Yeah,
It's just, stuff like that. Or it has to have a really great build up. Like
yeah.
it doesn't necessarily need to be gory. It doesn't necessarily need to be over the top. But again, like that opening kill of Halloween, that build up of the being in the killer's point of view and seeing
Mhm,
the killer take the knife and go up to the girl's room. So yeah, so for me, it's either they need to be original, they need to be something that you just wouldn't see coming, or the build up and the circumstances surrounding the kill need to be so great that they just become that memorable. So that's for me. So it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be gory. I mean, think of a
mhm.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There is so little blood in that movie. It's insane to think how intense some of those kills are when you don't even actually see anything. Like when he kills the
Right,
brother in the wheelchair in the woods, you don't even see that, but it's
right.
such an impact because these two are running from their lives and Leatherface is coming through the woods after them, and the whole atmosphere is horrifying and suspenseful. So when the kill actually happens, even though you don't see it, you
Mhm.
remember it. Or I always think of it's not actually a kill, but the meat hook in the back. There are
Yeah,
so many people who remember that meat hook going into her back, but you
you
don't
never see
see
it.
it. You
Yeah,
never see it, but it's so memorable that
mhm.
people have that Mandela effect of, "Oh, yeah, you see the hook going in." So
Right.
that to me, that's what makes a good kill. What
Y
about you? What would you
you know,
say?
just to also say something about that because I
Please.
think it's such a good point that you made, in TCM. First of all, Toby Hooper, rest in peace to Toby Hooper. He was fantastic, with these
Mhm.
ideas of fear and how to shoot it in a film, just like Wes. And that scene with Pam, as he's taking her over to the hook, you see the hook, and they really focus on the hook, and it just, it's very in your face there. But when he puts her on the hook, you don't see it, but it's the way that it's shot, and it's also her reaction, because she
Mhm.
kind of, freezes with that look of pain, and like a almost like a silent scream. And so again, it's making your mind work, and it's so effective. And just by contrast, and I had just recently done one of my latest Why You Hate episodes was on the TCM remake, which, by the way, if you haven't seen that, please check it out. Please look, watch them, put the playlist on, watch it. But in the TCM remake, the scene where they take and do the same idea with the hook, with I forgot his name, but the hitchhiker guy who was blonde,
Yeah.
when they put him on the hook, they take the time to, cut, not so much show it. You don't see it go in, but it's
Mm.
much more in your face as far as how it's done. And I don't think it's as effective as what I'm getting at. Like I think the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is still more effective in that sense because they take you away from it right before it actually happens, and your mind fills in the blanks. The same can be said, and this also goes to scary, what makes a scene scary. When Leatherface is chasing Sally, the way that it's shot, like Gunner is it looks like Gunner is like 3 inches in back of Marilyn Burns running after her,
Mhm.
with a chainsaw. And by the way, it was a real chainsaw. It was
Yeah,
a
it
real
was.
it was a real
That's
chainsaw,
impressive. Yeah.
and Gunner was running with it, and Marilyn had to trust him with it. But that is scary to me because
Yeah.
he's so close to getting her. And they don't show him get her, and obviously he doesn't. But in other words, there's no gore to that. But I think it's so effective as a scary
Yes.
scene. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
going back to kills, I agree with you. Originality is a big thing. Build up is a huge part of it. But I think another thing too, and I guess it's sort of the buildup as well, but I think that it has to it has to let things linger. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like when it happens, like for instance, the Bob kill in Halloween. It's not gory. It's I mean, there is buildup because he's going downstairs to get some food, and we know that Michael, will get him, but when and how, and he opens the door and boom, there it happens. So there's a little bit of buildup, but I like the way it lingers so that your mind can kind of process what's going on. When Michael stabs him, and then Nick takes a step back from Bob, and
Mhm.
Bob's there, obviously dead. And I'm not just talking about the head tilt. The head tilt is great, and that's Michael all day, every day, and I love that. But just the fact that the camera allowed the shot to kind of linger, I think it really lets you absorb what happened. Whereas there are a lot of kills in slasher films where the kill happens. Like let's go to Rachel in Halloween 5, which was absolutely horrible, not only because she shouldn't have been killed, but number two, the way they did it. It was ridiculous. It was horrible. I've ranted about it. You can check that out. But they cut away from it. Like you don't get
They
to
did. Mhm.
absorb it. You don't have time to grieve for Rachel,
Yeah.
which was a travesty. So that's a good example of how not to do it, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm gonna say we gotta let it, and I'm not trying to imitate the Cranberries, but we gotta let it linger. We gotta let it linger. Okay, shout out to the Cranberries. If you know, you know. Okay. You get everything on this channel. You never know what to expect. Speaking of the Cranberries, so we're gonna go to music, Rachel. So what does the music obviously we can't play music right now, but if you were to describe the music of our film, what is it like?
Whatever music you are scoring your film with, and this is gonna sound really weird, but it's true. It has to fit the film. So, for example, Halloween, you have that really simple piano music because it's a simple, clean movie. Like if you went in with like
Hmm.
Trouble in Woodsboro and tried to put that into Halloween, it would not work. It's
Hmm.
the Trouble in Woodsboro. It's a great piece of music. It's really effective, but it works because it works in the Scream universe. The piano works in the Halloween universe. The synth kind of music works in the Nightmare on Elm Street universe. So whatever you're composing for, it has to really fit your film. And I do think that there are some slashers, especially in like the 2000s, where they do have music that doesn't quite mesh with the film, like you
Hmm.
listen to some of the score and you're like, again, I think My Bloody Valentine 2009 is a great example. They've got some really
Yeah.
like hardcore rock stuff going on. It's like this
Yeah.
is not working. This
Right.
doesn't match up with your movie. I think Urban Legend has it a little bit as well, where they kind of try to bring in that like early 2000s kind of rock, and it just doesn't work. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think so yeah, whatever you're doing, it has to suit your film. The other thing is it has to build atmosphere. I think this music in these films work best when they build the atmosphere. Like you said, the Freddy motif, like you hear those notes and you
Hmm.
instantly feel chilled, or you hear the opening bars of Halloween and you're instantly like, oh my God, yeah, what's going to happen. So yeah, I think
Hmm.
atmosphere and suiting and making sure it suits the film. And that also goes for pieces of music that you're using. So not just score. So the Fear Street trilogy was set in the 90s and then in the 70s. So, of course, they used 90s and 70s songs, but they picked songs that very specifically, worked for the characters. Like, there's a great scene of the main character of the first movie who's kind of like this really like, grr, like hates the world character, where
Mhm,
she's listening to Creep by Radiohead, and it just
mhm.
works. This whole, I'm a freak. And it's like, yeah, yeah, this works. She is a freak. This works for the movie. So I think, yeah, you're really gonna take that into account. What do you reckon, Knight? What's your criteria for music?
Well, I think the music has to move you. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And obviously, if we're talking about a horror film, you obviously want it to have some type of it has to scare you a little bit. But what I mean is that it has to move you. I think that's about it, the best way I can word it. And it doesn't necessarily have to scare you, but it has to make you feel invested. And here's a good example of a theme that doesn't scare me, but it moves me, and that's the theme in Candyman. That is a
Oh,
theme that truly,
mhm.
the first time I watched it, and even up until my most recent watch which was like 2 months ago, it
Mhm.
just grips my soul. It moves me, and I think the best slasher films and those with great music, it's music that moves me in one way or the other. Maybe it scares me, or maybe it makes me feel nostalgic, or maybe, like I said, like with Candyman, it's almost like an emotional. There's a sadness to it, but it just grabs my heart, so to speak. So I think that our song, or I should say our score or music, it has to move us.
It's a great I think one moment, like, a thing that I always remember of music moving me, I mean, Candyman, absolutely agree with, but I always
Mm.
think of the opening scene of Scream when Casey's parents come home and you can
Yeah,
hear the music change from something that's threatening to something that's actually really sad.
yeah,
And all of a sudden you just feel like, "Oh my god, we're not just watching, like, some random girl die, we're watching a girl who has family, whose parents now have to come home to find her." And I always just loved how Marco Beltrami managed to put in that beautiful bit. Just it's the slightest little change, but you can hear it and it just gets to you because all of a sudden you're feeling sad and you're feeling,
mm,
oh my God, like these poor parents. And that's when she's saying, not my daughter, no, not my daughter. And the music
yeah.
just perfectly. So yes, no, that's a great way to put it. The music moving you, that's fantastic. I
Mm,
agree.
yeah, absolutely. Real quick too in the chat, to catch up with these guys for a second. DJ's in the house. What's up, man?
Hey.
Good to see you. Val was saying the music must help tell the story. Absolutely. Julie saying "Creep" is now a goated song for me after hearing Hugh Grant sing it. Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Oh, I love Hugh Grant, man. Um, and Doom Turkey was saying, I'm all about a good environmental kill. Well said. We got Jason in the house. Hey, Jason, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Um, and yeah, and if you haven't hit the like button, please do. It helps to support us. Okay, now when we talk about the finale, and again, we're not necessarily crafting a whole full blown finale, moment by moment, but what do we need to have in our finale of this slasher film?
You think with a finale, okay, first of all, it needs to be interesting. You need a finale
Okay.
that's going to keep your interest, that's going to grab you and keep you there. Like I said, this is kind of my issue with I Know What You Did Last Summer as I get to the finale, and I just start tuning out when Julie's running around the boat, and it's a bit
They
boring.
ran out of
I think
steam.
yeah, it really did. Oh, look, for anyone who likes I Know What You Did Last Summer, I actually really love I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's
Yeah.
not the best made film. I think that's it's a general consensus. I feel like I'm really ragging on this film, and I don't mean to. It just keeps popping in my head. All right. You kind of want everything that you've been working for in the film to kind of come together in the finale. So, for example, in the finale of like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Heather has been researching, Nancy rather, and she's gotten, her Home Alone Kevin McAllister tips for taking people down. And she's found out the story of Freddy and she's made her plan. So you kind of see that all go into effect when she, calls her dad and she's like, I'm gonna go and get him. You need to be here when I bring him
Yeah.
out. All of that. A Scream is the same. You finally get the culmination of Sydney's trauma coming out and the actual source of like what happened to her mother that night, the confirmation that she was wrong about Cotton, all of that. I mean, even
Hmm.
Halloween, you kind of have that build up of, Laurie has had this through line of she's been a very meek character. All her friends have been teasing her that she doesn't take action, that she's not assertive. And so in the finale, you get to see her grab those knitting needles and just,
That's
you
right.
know, assert her agency and her power. So I think that's what you really want, is you want everything to kind of come together and give you, I mean, it doesn't have to tie up every loose end. I'm not one of those people that's like, we need to know everything that happened about every single person in the entire movie, but you want the general idea to all kind of come together and give you that kind of satisfying, conclusion. So I think
Hmm.
that's what's most important for me. What about you, Knight?
I think that, and you just hit it on the nail when you talked about Halloween. I think what also makes a finale really good, and these are obviously aspects of that, but I think what also makes a finale really good is that it surprises you. Like it continues to ramp up. Let me put it that way. It continues to ramp up where you don't expect it. Because here you have Laurie going over to see what's going on in this friggin' house. Michael comes out of the darkness, which again is still one of the greatest shots in horror movie history. And then he's chasing her. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh crap, this is the finale, right? Oh, he's coming after her. And then we ramp it up multiple times after that because after she stabs him, she thinks he's dead. No, he's not. We go upstairs. We think everything's cool. We're talking to the kids, and all of a sudden, Michael's strolling up the stairs, doopy 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 doop, and then she makes a choice to basically risk her life to save the kids, which was another great moment for her as a character. And then we've got the closet scene where she stabs him, and then we think it's done. And then he does the sit up. And we're like, what the hell? And it's, so it ramps up multiple times. And I think that's what makes a finale so good and so memorable. And like you said, same thing in Scream, how we have those multiple moments that just keep ramping up and you get so in other words, you're surprised. And maybe surprised is a good way to word it, but I'm just going to say ramps up. Okay.
I also love, I'll just say quickly, this is not necessarily something that's necessary, but I love
Hmm.
when a finale delivers like a final gut punch. Like you think everything's
Hmm.
fine. Like I think Black Christmas 1974 has one of the
Yeah.
best gut punches at the end of the movie. And
Yes.
even Halloween kind of does it when Michaels disappears, you think, oh, Loomis shot him 6 times,
Yeah.
like he's dead. And then you look over and it's like, crap, he's gone. Or,
Right.
the end of Final Destination when you think, oh my God, they made it to Paris. Everything is good. Oh shit, here
Yep.
comes the sign. So yeah, I do love
Yeah.
when you just get that last little gut punch of going, oh, guess what? You thought it was all fine? Think again. That's always
Yeah.
that's always fun.
No, that's a good point because it sends you out on an adrenaline spike. Like, what? Oh
Uh-huh.
my
Yep.
God. It's absolutely crazy.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Oh,
I
when I first saw Black Christmas, I sat there after the movie for like 10 minutes just going,
yeah,
"No, no!" I
right.
was devastated.
Yeah, I mean, because the end of that, and again, and we have a lot of folks in here, and by the way, hey to Jeff, Jeff's in the house, and Zed. We have a lot of folks that may not really know a lot about Black Christmas 74. Or they may not have seen it in a long time, or maybe
Please.
never at all. It is essential.
It
If you're
is.
if you're a
Uh-huh.
slasher fan, it's essential to watch this film. What Bob Clark was able to do with that film is just
Mm.
unbelievable. And most notably, I mean, Carpenter has said, he drew inspiration from it. So
Yes.
the ending of it, but you're right, because you had this huge emotional thing going on, and then to realize, what happened to Billy and the
Mhm.
and the state that Jess is in, and the fact that, oh my God, to end the film like that,
Mhm.
it just sends you out on such a big like WTF moment, and
Yep.
it's great. It's absolutely great. Now, this is what I would like to do real quick, just for the fun of it, and for you guys in the chat. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Okay, so we've got these different aspects that we crafted right on the fly, and I think it's fantastic. Great job,
Looks pretty
Rachel.
good, yeah.
Yeah, and for you guys in the chat that have also given your feedback, great job on that. We have the different things that we want in our slasher film. So this is what we're going to do, just real quick, and we're going to try to we're going to try to do this in an orderly fashion. We're going to take each aspect and we're going to list a movie or what have you where we want that aspect. So obviously the first thing we've got is a killer. And we talked about the things that we want in our killer, the mask, the backstory. We want the killer to stand out. Rachel, I'm going to start with you. You guys in the chat, start throwing your comments out. We may not get to everyone, but we'll try. Who is the killer in if you could take a killer from a film, who's the killer that we have in our slasher movie? You know, we're compiling this movie together, or at least a structure of it. What killer would you want in our film?
My instinct is always just to say Michael Myers because he's just so scary, but he
Mhm,
doesn't have the backstory here. So we're
mhm,
going to leave Michael by the wayside, and I'm actually going to nominate Ghostface because Ghostface has a mask, he stands out always, and the backstory, the good thing with Ghost Story is he can have any backstory you want because he can literally be anyone. So I
mhm.
think that's who I'd go with.
Okay,
What
okay.
about
So,
you, Night?
well, actually, but before I get to my thought, let me jump in here and see what these guys are saying because I'm just really curious. We've got Scott saying Michael Myers. All right. So we got a vote for Michael in there. Okay. You guys let us know who you would want in it. And Val saying the finale needs to leave you wanting more. That's so true. It does. You know, so and that's like I said, when it's open ended like that, like we said with like Black Christmas or obviously like Halloween, or even Scream or whatever, it does. It leaves you wanting more because you just like you lost your breath, so to speak. You're like, oh my gosh. You know what I mean? It's just really something that sticks with you. Jeff is with Michael. Doom Turkey is saying Freddy checks off every box for a killer. Well said. Well said. Zed going with Michael. Let's see. And I think that's all we've got so far. Now, Freddy, here's the thing, and again, you know, we're just talking about this just for fun. You know, Freddie obviously, and let me just say this too, it doesn't necessarily have to check off all these boxes. These were just some things that we threw out there that we would want in our film. And I'm sure if Rachel and I took the time, we could probably come up with a dozen other things to put into these specific aspects of the film. You know, Freddie is a really good example because he does have the backstory that is so interesting and it's so horrific. It's vile. You know what I'm saying? Like Freddy is a villain. There's no doubt at all about that. And he truly stands out. The first time I saw Freddy Krueger, I was just like, oh my God. You know, just the creativity that Wes had with this character. And it's like it's funny because hindsight is always 2020. We look back at it now and we say, okay, it's a burnt guy in a sweater and a hat with a razor glove. And it seems so simple. And in some ways, maybe it is, but it's so creative. Like, even to this day, I think to myself, how did Wes come up with this thing, man? I've seen the behind the scenes, I've heard his interviews, so I know how he came up with it. But you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense,
No,
Rachel?
I get no. I know what you mean. Like you can hear
Yeah.
that, like, oh yeah, he had he read about this guy who died in his sleep and he did this, but it's like, but
Yeah.
where did you pull this guy from? This creepy guy. And I think that,
Yeah.
obviously we also have to give Robert Englund his props, because
Yes.
he brings that character to life in a way that I mean, like, it's one of the reasons that I hold out on watching the new one is I'm like, I cannot imagine anyone else being Freddy. Like he's just
Yeah.
so integrated into that character and it's right from the first film. It's not like he took time to integrate into that character. No, right from the first film he is Freddy Krueger. And yeah,
Mhm.
so from the mind of Wes and then the acting of Robert, and you just put them together and you just get this insanely amazing villain who has stood the test of time.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it at all. I mean, he's just one of those characters that when I sit back when I sit back and think about it, I'm just like, this is just so twisted, you
It
know?
really is.
It really
Uh-huh.
is twisted, but again, Wes was a one of a kind talent. Now, when I think of a killer, and I think about the aspects of, I agree he has to stand out. A mask is great. But I also add in the idea of where did he go? You know what I mean? Like he just seems like he's everywhere. And I know you thought about it, but then you went with something else. But I gotta say, Michael, Michael is that killer to me because of the fact that when he kills, it's efficient and it's scary. He's creeping around. He's there one moment, gone the next. So then you're thinking, okay, like when Laurie looks out the window in the backyard, he's right there. And then the next frame, he's gone. And it's like, okay, did Michael just pull a Harry Potter, or is it Laurie and her mind playing tricks on her? You know what I mean? And I think that's such a
Mhm.
cool aspect of Michael Myers, which I was glad to see that they held on to, to a fairly good degree in the new trilogy. So Michael, to me, and I know other killers do that as well. I mean, Jason does that, but I think Michael is like the quintessential. He's the ninja.
Yeah.
He's the ninja, and that is creepy in and of itself, even before he kills you, which of course he can do in a thousand different ways, and he's very efficient at it. So I would say for me, the killer, it looks like Michael, in other
Okay.
words.
You know what? I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna go back to Michael. Like, I was trying to make it fit all of our criteria, but, like,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I think of, like, movie villains who scare me, Michael scared me the most of, like, any movie villain. Maybe except Hannibal Lecter, but that's a
Mhm.
whole other conversation. But Michael is so, so scary. Although, night okay, here, I'm gonna make this just a tiny bit more interesting. Michael, okay, but which Michael? Which movie Michael are you
Ah,
choosing?
okay. If okay, see now we're gonna make this thing go another like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, you know, this is how I look at it.
Mhm.
I think Nick Castle obviously had all the elements. I mean, that's where we started, and I absolutely love what Nick did with the character. But and again, this is gonna sound so like, like recency bias and all that type of stuff. But I cannot look, there's never
There's
been
no
any
lying.
lying here. There's no lying. Look at Jeff writing Hobo Myers. You know it's not Hobo Myers. You guys.
I was gonna bring that up, Jeff, so thank you for that. Because we all know
Could
how much Knight loves Hobo Myers with his
you imagine?
panhandling and eating dogs.
Oh my god, you guys, I love you guys. Look at Val, like, no, no Hobo Myers. You know it, Val. Val knows what's up. Um, but when I think of Witch Michael, I keep coming back to James Drew Courtney. And I think in 2018, specifically 2018, and I thought he was great in Kills and obviously when he was in Ends, I thought he was great too. But, there was just something about him in 2018 that just worked, man. For me, as far as to name which Michael, and again, maybe I could change that if you ask me in 5 minutes, and I might change it to Nick. But just right now, James in 2018, man, that one shot when he's walking down the street, trick-or-treaters are all over the place. I mean, like he was
The
basically
long shot.
yeah,
Mhm.
Michael was basically at Mardi Gras, and there could have been a lot of killing going on, and you just didn't know. Like people, like as he's walking, there are kids and teenagers walking past the boogeyman. They're basically taking a trip to Vegas and ready to lose $100. You know what I'm saying? Like it could have happened. And that was a great scene because again, it was really accentuating that whole mythology of Michael. So, anyways, I'm ranting because I love talking about the shape, but I would nominate 2018's version of Michael.
Nice. Very
Yeah,
good.
that's what I would do. And also a big thank you to Jeff. Jeff in the house. He's gifted 5 memberships because
That's
of
awesome.
of the Hobo Myers comment. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. We appreciate you, brother. Very, it's very kind of you. For you guys that got gifted a membership, please show some love to Jeff. You know, he's very kind, does that quite a lot, and we can't thank you enough. It truly keeps this channel going. It does, man. Thank you. Um, okay, so well, let me ask you, Rachel, if and I don't know if you have an answer. If you do, that's fine. But which version of Michael would you nominate?
It is so hard for me to choose
Yeah.
between Nick Castle and James Jude Courtney because,
Hmm.
like, Nick Castle was the one who scared me first. You know, he was the one that I watched first, and he was so scary. Just the walk, man. How does someone make walking so terrifying?
Yeah.
But I so agree with you. James Jude Courtney, like when I saw Halloween 2018 in the cinema and
Hmm.
every scene with him, I remember the scene where he was at the boot of the car and he took the mask out and he put it on. And I was like bouncing in my chair. I was
Right.
so excited. And I am so with you. That long shot where he's just walking through the neighborhood and a kid actually runs into him and is all like,
Yeah.
"Oh, sorry, mister." I'm like, "Oh, kid, you are so lucky. You have
Right.
no idea how close you just came to dying."
Yeah, because
And
Michael
just
was killing kids in this
yeah,
movie.
he's killing kids in this movie.
Yeah.
He killed that little kid near the bus
Y-
crash.
yeah.
And yeah, just he's so he's similar to Nick. He's so clean and precise. Like when he
Yes.
kills the lady in the house, or the woman who gets the knife through the throat. Holy crap, was
Ooh.
that a moment?
Right.
So it's so hard for me to choose between the two. But if I absolutely was one like pushed to gun to my head, I don't think I can go past Nick because he is the original and he is the one that made. I mean, that was the first one that scared me, and that was the
Hmm.
one that haunted my nightmares. So as much as I think James is pretty much just as good as Nick, I think because Nick is the original, because
Yeah.
he's the first one that scared the shit out of me, it
Hmm.
has to be him. I will, though, give a quick, and this is kind of odd because I don't like the zombie films, but I love Tyler Mane, especially in the
Hmm.
first one. Obviously, Hobo Myers, we've got a lot to discuss there, but his Tyler's physicality in the
Yeah.
first movie, in particular the hospital scenes, like
Yeah.
wow. Like, that's why he is actually one of my favorite Michaels, despite the fact that I don't love the zombie films because, yeah, so just a shout out to Tyler because I think he's so great, but I think I'll go with Nick just because he's the OG.
Okay. All right. Okay. So now, if we go to story, we talked about having an arc, making it something that's universal that we can all kind of understand and gravitate towards. If you were to give us a movie that is an example of what you'd want our story to feel like or be like or what have you, what would that movie be?
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the Fear Street trilogy again, 'cause it's just so good. I think that that story and that structure and the
Mhm,
mystery that was built around it. So, for those who haven't seen the Fear Street trilogy, it's loosely based off a bunch of books from the 90s, and it
mhm,
follows two towns, Shadyside and Sunnyvale, and they are warring towns. And our protagonists are from Shadyside, which is the more downtrodden town. And there is this whole mystery built into it as to what went down between these two towns and why does one do so good when the other one does so badly. And then
mhm,
there's this stream of like murderers who run through the story and trying to figure out what made them murder people, what is going on between these two towns that makes all of this happen. And I just think the way that they bring in, I think small town mysteries are always fun, like not
mhm.
everyone lives in a small town, but most
Right.
people can understand the feel of like being in a community. If you live in a big city, you usually will, get friendly in like your suburbs and like that sort of area. So I think everyone can understand that sense of community and what happens when something bad happens in that community and how it brings down and kind of affects everyone. So I think small
Mhm,
town mysteries are really great. And that story in Fear Street, our main protagonist Dina has a great arc, because she lives in Shadyside. She is a closeted, well, not closeted, but she's a lesbian in the 90s, which was very hard to be. And she's got
mhm,
this whole arc of, discovering herself, discovering her relationship while she's discovering the mystery of the town. So for me, I would definitely go with the Fear Street trilogy because I think those movies, and I say the trilogy because you really do have to watch the three movies together. They create a full story.
mhm,
You can watch each individually, but it's best to watch them together. And yeah, I think that story so interesting, such great characters. The lead had a great arc, and the mystery was fantastic. And the way it all came together in the final movie is
mhm.
just so well done. It's exactly the kind of payoff I want for my mystery because it has some great reveals, some stuff that you didn't see coming. And as a fan of the book, it was really fun to see how they upended the mythology from the book and put it into the movie. So I
Hmm.
really like that. So for me, for like story and mystery, I would go with the Fear Street trilogy. What about you, Knight? Which movies are for you for this one?
Well, I think for me, and I'm gonna put down Fear Street because I think that's a very good example. You know what I mean of what we'd want in our story, how we'd want it to feel. In other words,
Yeah.
um, for me, I think that movies that have these aspects and kind of stuck with me are the type of examples that I would give. Whether it be Elm Street, which again, like we talked about, had this whole backstory thing, and how universal that is. When you're talking about children and
Mhm.
families and the lengths that you would go to protect your family, and ideas of how to um, you know, justice and so forth, and all those types of things. And of course, the outcome of all that, which is of course what Freddie is, and how that trickles down to Nancy and the other characters. So I think that would be a good example of what I would want, because there's so many aspects that are kind of coming together to give us the story that we saw in Elm Street. Another good example that I really dig is, and this is, and again, you guys that have been around here, I'm always trying to talk about old school films that people just either don't know about or that don't know enough about. But Psycho 2, which to me is such an underrated and underappreciated, not only horror movie but sequel. It's just so well done because we know the character of Norman Bates at that point, and we are scared of him because of what happened in the original film. And what Psycho 2 did that was so amazing is it twisted all of those things, but it didn't let you think, okay, well, now everything's hunky dory with Norman. No, it made us question everything. It made us question everything that went on. And you had these new characters that were kind of complicating matters. And it kind of kept going and it kept going until the horrific ending, which was like, oh my God, what did we just do? We almost made it to the finish line, but now we've screwed up, that type of feeling. So I would like it to have like a power to it, like that. Like the audience may know something, but they don't really know everything. And it kind of plays with your perception of reality. I think that would be a good way for our story to pan out. And Jeff saying, I think the movie The Hitcher, um, let's see, suits, shirts frame in this kid trying to figure out the mystery of this killer. Who is he? Where did he come from? Yeah, I mean, that's a great example as well. I love The Hitcher, and it's just so scary because you don't know. Rutger Hauer was so creepy in that movie. It is, oh my God, it is so underrated. A lot of people don't know much about it, but that's a great example. Absolutely. Um, Doom Turkey also saying Fear Street is cool and unique because the story takes place over 3 movies. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so when we talk about mystery, Rachel, is there a movie that comes to mind that is a good example of the type of mystery we'd want in our slasher film?
It's like the Scream movies. I think the Scream movies always have fun. I think the first one in particular, because there is so much backstory with Maureen and with Sydney's mother, and this doubt that's being cast on, like, did Cotton Weary really kill her? And if he didn't, who did? And then it's that
Yeah.
mystery of like, so who killed him? Her? Who framed him? Does Sydney really not know that it wasn't Cotton, or is she just trying to like kid herself? And then, the mystery of like, who is stalking Sydney? Why are they stalking Sydney? What is going on here? So I think that with Scream, it's so good because there's a mystery, but it's not so in depth that like, you're feeling like you're in like a Sherlock Holmes or Agatha Christie, story.
Right.
There's enough to keep you intrigued, but it doesn't
Mhm.
bog the story down. And I think the use of Gail Weathers in particular when it comes to this story, she's kind of like the Sherlock character trying to figure
Yes.
everything out, but she's also the antagonist. And then I think everything comes comes together so well in Scream, and it has such a great payoff. But I really, really like the way that mystery unfolds. So yeah, not too complicated, but enough to keep you intrigued. And when you do get the reveal, and it all kind of falls into place, and you're just like, oh my God, and you just realize, like, how much she really should have dumped Billy. And it's
Yeah.
just like, it's just a great conclusion. So yeah, like the Scream movies have always been hailed as, like, murder mysteries, that mystery part that they have in them. And some movies do it better. And actually, no, 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 not Scream. Scream 3. I think
Mm,
Scream 3 actually has the best mystery, because I love the Hollywood angle, and why are there pictures of Maureen Prescott, and what is going on here, and why is
mm,
it all of a sudden to do with the past? And again, it links very much into that first movie, and finding out exactly what happened to Maureen, that then started this whole chain events of, like, everything up until that movie. So yeah,
mm.
the Scream movies, I think in general, are really, really good. But yeah, number 3 in particular, which I know gets a lot of hate. I personally
Right.
love Scream 3, but I
Mhm.
think that mystery is really good. What about you,
Yeah.
Knight?
Well, I definitely agree. I mean, Scream is has to be one of the films that comes to your mind when you're talking about mystery and
Yeah.
well done mystery in a slasher film. And I agree. You could pick multiple films in the franchise, but when you said three, I thought to myself and said, you know what, you're right, because with three, there was this sense of like, what the hell's going on? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like we at this point, this is the third film, so we
Yep.
know the backstory. We know the characters. We've lived with them. We've survived with them. And all of a sudden, it's kind of like, nope, there's stuff you don't know. And it's kind of like, wait a minute, what? And I thought that
Yeah.
that was not only very crafty, it was risky. It was risky
It's
as well.
it was.
Because
Mhm.
you're kind of messing with the formula a little bit. And you're right. Scream 3 gets a lot of hate. I've talked about it a lot here. Obviously, my good buddy Steven, he talked about it so much in the community as far as the aspects of this film that are really, really good and well done. So I agree with you. I think Scream 3 is a good example. I just thought Scream has to be my answer, but I think if we get specific, you're right. I could go with Scream 3 on that, no doubt at all. Okay.
Mhm.
And Jeff was saying you could say the same thing about Saw movies, especially the end of the first one. Yeah, I mean, the
Definitely the
finale of
first
the
one.
first one, dude, when I saw it
I
in the
know.
theater, man,
Oh,
people were ripping and roaring, and I was like, what? It's like, no, and nobody knew. People always say, oh,
nobody knew.
I knew he was
No.
not
Oh,
dead. No, you didn't.
bullshit, you
You didn't.
did.
No, don't lie to yourself.
No.
But, yeah, the ending of Saw was absolutely fantastic, and to be quite honest, for me, I love, like you said too, I love these types of endings, and it hooked me, man. I was so hungry for more,
Mhm.
and when the second film came out, I was like, "Yes!" I think that was a big hook of those films, and I think in general, they did very well with those
Mhm.
those finales and so forth. Okay, let's go to our next aspect. And before we do that, I was just about to say it. Julie is working hard. We got 49 likes. Let's get to 50. If you haven't hit the like button, please do. We have some other folks that have jumped into the chat. We hope you're enjoying this conversation. This is a lot of fun. Okay, characters. When we think about characters, what's a good example as far as a film of characters that you would like to have in our film?
I hate to not branch out, but I'm going with Scream again, because Scream really showed what you can do with, like, good characters in a slasher film. Like, I know that we've got some predecessors, Halloween's got, but I think with, like, things like Halloween's and Nightmares, you've really just got the final girls. Like I said, I am not
Hmm.
impressed with any of the dudes in Nightmare in the Nightmare films. And Halloween, like we said, as much as Annie and Linda are entertaining characters, they're not exactly the most likable. But I think with Scream, you get this really great melding pot of characters. Obviously, Sydney is a great final girl. She's got a lot going for her. Tatum as the best friend is so great. Randy as your resident nerd, he is fantastic. Billy and Stu, even before they're revealed as killers, are so entertaining. Stu in particular is
Hmm.
Matthew Lillard was just having the time of his life on that
Yes.
movie set, and it shows. And then you've got characters like, Gail, who's the antagonist, but also still has some depth to her because her
Hmm.
relationship with Dewey. Dewey is such a great character. I know that he originally was supposed to be written as kind of like this big football player, meathead type guy, and David Arquette's like, well, I think I can bring a different kind of meathead quality to him, and
Yeah.
he was really great. And I love how sweet Dewey is and how
Yes.
inept he's. I particularly love the juxtaposition of the police captain smoking a cigarette and Dewey with his ice cream
Ice
cone.
cream. Yeah. It's so good.
Great parallel between the two.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
like, the cop throws his cigarette, and Dewey kind of looks at his ice cream as if to say, Do I throw this too? Do I?" And then it's like, it's just so great. So, yeah, at the risk of sounding repetitive, I'm going with Scream. I think Scream has some of the best, slasher characters out there,
Yeah.
and the movies just continued. We had some misses, Derek with his goddamn singing and, you know,
Ah,
and,
oh,
Hallie was no Tatum, but, I
yeah.
think over the movies, we get some really great characters. Where are
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
landing, Knight? Which movie are you nominating?
Yeah, I think Scream has to be, one of the answers that would come to most people's minds. They're just great characters. You said it best, and I echo everything you say. If I was to throw out some other ideas of some slasher films that I really enjoyed characters, I always go back to the final chapter, Friday 4. I think that they were some really fun characters. Trish is a very underrated final girl. Tommy, look, you can say what you want, but Corey Feldman as a kid, he was money, and he
Yeah,
was very
yeah,
successful and
yeah.
very likable. So he was a great child character in a slasher film. You had a lot of great side characters. You got Crispin Glover dancing. You can never beat that, except if you're Ed Harris.
But I was
And
gonna
so
say Ed Harris.
that's it. You've been around this channel a lot.
Yeah.
I can tell. There you go. So, but yeah, ultimately, I think Scream is the answer. To have that many great characters that are so unique and have their own life to them. I don't think you could do much better. So I'll go with Scream on that. Okay. When we talk about scary, an example of how we want our film to have that scary feeling, what's a film that comes to your mind?
This one is easy. This one is Halloween, 100%. The
Okay.
atmosphere of that movie. I think Halloween is one of those great examples of how you can do so much with so little, and how
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like geysers of blood. I mean, we all enjoy geysers of blood, of course. They're fun depending on the movie. Glenn
Hmm.
definitely deserved it. But, Halloween, between the music and the direction, Nick Castle, so much atmosphere, so much playing with shadows and light and dark. The boogeyman could come out of you from the corner, he could be
Hmm.
standing on your street. Just such a minimal approach. And to me, that is the scariest. There is nothing scarier than what you imagine. And Halloween
Mm.
leaves a lot of room for that. So definitely Halloween for me. What about
Mm.
you?
You're talking my language. I absolutely think Halloween's a great example of what we'd want because again, it's simplistic, but effective. Like it works. Like it worked then and it works now. As far as over the course of decades, I think it's ultimately one of those things that is timeless, and it's been shown to still have its amazing effect. This boogeyman, we don't know why he's doing what he's doing. There's no rhyme or reason, but he's just coming to get you for whatever reason. And the only person that knows enough about him um, is the doctor, and the doctor is scared shitless. The doctor is like, "Evil has come to your town," and blah blah blah. And it's like, "Oh crap, man! I mean, he's been around this dude since he was a little kid. This is bad news."
Yep.
So I think Halloween is a great example. You can throw Elm Street in there as far as atmosphere and so forth. I think it did such a great job with atmosphere. Even things like a Hellraiser, which obviously some people they kind of talk about, well, is it a slasher, is it not? It's technically not, although they sometimes try to position it as such. But just as an example of atmosphere, it just had this atmosphere. Like when I saw it as a kid, I thought to myself, I shouldn't have watched this at night. That's the type of feeling that I want.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Jeff was saying TCM. '78, and
Oh,
Friday
I
the
get
13th, the
that.
original. Yeah,
Mm.
it's a good idea.
PCM, I have only watched 2 times because it is so intense. The first time was when
Mm,
I was 17, and the second time was just a few months ago with my sister, and we both agree, we're like, "Okay, we don't need to watch this again for, like, another 20 years," because, yeah,
yeah,
it is so effective and so it's so grimy, that movie,
it
you
is.
wanna take 10 showers after you watch it, you
Yep.
just yeah, it just, like, it gets under your skin. No, TCM definitely is like, ugh.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Okay, so next up, we have kills. Now, what's a film that has kills that you think we should utilize as our film?
Gosh, there's so many. I kind of wanna go with Nightmare, though. Nightmare on Elm Street has such great kills, and the thing with
Hmm.
Nightmare on Elm Street, because he's killing in the dreams, they look so horrifying in real
Yeah.
life because it's an invisible force,
Hmm.
and it's just but I just think the Nightmare films, Tina's death is insane, and you've got poor Rod there. That's the other thing I didn't mention with kills, is it's always good when you have characters react to kills, if you have a
Yes.
character there to react to the kill, to watch that sense of helplessness, because you can really feel that with Rod, in that scene where poor Tina is being dragged all over the ceiling, and then
Hmm.
Glenn's death is just fantastic, like
Hmm.
absolutely amazing. And I think that the kills in Nightmare are so memorable. They're a little bit outside of your average slasher deaths. It's not just some dude with a knife. So I
Hmm.
think Nightmare, with its originality, with its over the top, I reckon that would be like really awesome. Don't know how it's going to work with our more toned down atmosphere, where we've got a bit of a hot of different things for
Yeah.
this movie. But I might go with Nightmare because that was the first thing that just popped into my head. What about
Yeah.
you, Knight?
I think that, and I agree. Nightmare is a great example of like, because they're different and they stand out and so forth, and that's what that whole movie is all about. That's what the franchise became, which was amazing. I also, and I know it's I know people are gonna be like, what? I just want to throw, I know I said it earlier, but I want to throw Psycho in there just to show some love. Psycho, Black Christmas, those are films that jumped into my mind as well. Because like you said, I didn't want to keep going down the rabbit hole with Halloween, but Psycho and Black Christmas, predated Halloween. And the thing about those kills were they were so simplistic compared to something like Elm Street. But what they used, instead of the creativity that Elm Street had, they had
Mm,
tension. They had
yes.
the build
Yes.
up. And I
Mhm.
thought that it's timeless, especially if you have a good story and if you have good characters. Again, you got to be invested. So as these things are being teased out and the tension is ratcheted up, when the kill happens, it almost doesn't even matter what the kill is. It's the journey. You know how they say it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Yes,
I
it's the
think that can
journey.
also
Mhm.
I think that could also hold true for kills in a lot of ways, because
Agree.
sometimes if a kill is so over the top, it can take you out of it.
True.
It's
That is
it's
true.
almost,
Mhm.
it's almost like this person, obviously it's a person, but you almost don't see it as a person anymore because it's so over the top and sometimes maybe
Yes.
even campy, you know? So, I'll throw in Black Christmas as my vote, for kills, just because of the way that it builds up, the tension, how it's ratcheted up, but obviously Elm Street could fit in there as well. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. So I'm just gonna throw in Black Christmas just as our note
Yeah.
here. Um, and for you guys in the chat, let us know what you think about this as well as we start to wind down here. Wow, time flies. So, what about music as
Wow,
we have,
yeah, I just saw
right?
that.
I know. I'm so sorry, but we're we're gonna be winding down the next few minutes. But for music, is there any type of music that you could use as an example of what we'd want ours to sound like?
I mean, I have to give a shout out to Halloween, obviously, because that
Mm,
piano score, that and even just the little, like, the stings and the musical cues, so good. But
mm,
I'm actually going to give another shout out to Fear Street here, because not
mm,
only is the score impeccable. Again, it's Marco Beltrami who did the Scream movie, so if you've heard his scores there, and his score in for Fear Street, so good. So not only is the score really well, really builds atmosphere, it even has a couple of moments like Scream where it starts to go into the tragic side of things, so that you know that you're in for a slightly deeper story. But Fear Street utilizes actual music so well. So, like I said, the first film is
Mm,
set in the 90s, and the way the music is almost a character. The way
mm,
they will use different songs to tell you the state of mind of the character, so that you don't need to have any dialogue, you just have this music playing. And then when we move into the 70s, in the second one, you have great songs like Don't Fear the Reaper and The Man Who Sold the
mhm,
World. And when you know the whole story of the movies and you go
mhm,
back and you rewatch some of these moments, you're like, oh, you didn't just arbitrarily put that piece of music there. You're actually trying to tell us something with this piece of music. And I love when music is utilized like that in films. And I think Fear Street has done it better than I have seen a lot of movies do it in a while. So
mhm.
for the fact that both the score and the actual soundtrack are so good and used so well, I'm going to go with Fear Street, because I think the music for that trilogy really amplifies how good it is and how much care was put into it. So that's for me. But like I said, I
Okay.
had to give that shout out to Halloween, because you just have to. That score is iconic and used to scare the shit out of me when I first watched the movie. I would hear
Mm.
the score and instantly get chills. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
same thing here. When I was a kid, man, and I heard that music, it was a chill up my spine,
Uh-huh.
man. And I think, if I would say, and I agree, Fear Street definitely does a good job of that. But I also agree, Halloween has to get some nods as far as just how powerful that music is to the film. It is such
Mhm.
a character. It's not it's just crazy how much of a character it is, even against other films that I think do a hell of a job too. Like, I said Elm Street. The music to Elm Street is so good, but and we
Yes.
even did this in Battle World. You guys who have been around for a while, you guys know, check out the Battle World playlist. Even when we've had Elm Street against Halloween, and I can't remember, what I'm pretty sure I knew what Coriander and Kill said. I don't remember what Eric said, but I think all of us had to give the nod. If you have a gun to our heads, we had to give the nod over to Halloween, because it's just so powerful. And like you said, the little stings, that's part of it too. The little
Yep.
stings and stuff like that were just so effective. So I could park on Halloween as well. We'll put Fear Street down as our note though, because I think what you said is so important too, because it also had like real music that was integral to the story and was also telling a story. So I think that was very important too. Now, real quick before we get to our last aspect and get ready to wind everything down for the stream, we appreciate you guys still hanging with us. This has been a lot of fun and
Mhm.
time flew by quick. Um, Jeff has a channel member anniversary for 14 months. So I want to give a shout out to Jeff saying, love this community. We appreciate that so much, man. Thank you so much for all your support. It is absolutely awesome. And we also have a member anniversary from my man Nightfall, 20 months. Unbelievable. We're heading to 2 years. Absolutely crazy. And he's saying, hello, family. Love you all. Thank you so much, man. We appreciate you. And by the way, man, let me know when you get your little figure, one of Coriander's creations. I can't wait to see a picture of it.
And
And
they are so cute, those
they
figurines, those things that
oh
Coriander makes. Oh, they're adorable. Tell her if she sets
they
up an Etsy shop, I will buy them all.
I keep telling her, hey, you guys have the power, man, because she honestly, and she's just a very humble person like that, anyways. But she's, always kind of like, well, I don't know, and this and that. I said, man, people really enjoy these, and she puts a lot of work into it. But hey, you guys keep telling her. And also, just to give a big shout out to my co-host here, Rachel also has a channel member anniversary, 15 months. She's saying, woo, that's great. Uh, seriously, though, thank you so much, for your support, obviously, but also your friendship and your willingness to be a part of this community and to always be positive, whether you're on panel or in the chat or in the comments. Seriously, and I know this as a content creator, but um, it's very special and very appreciative, and I echo my good friend Steven, but at this point of being a YouTuber, I really value, folks that they just have a genuine humbleness to them, and you do. And that's why whenever I get a chance, I always think to myself, man, it'd be great to have Rachel on and talk about this or to talk about that because you're just such a kind person who tries her damnedest to keep this train rolling in whatever way you can. And there's tons of different ways to do that. Just sometimes being a cool person in the chat and saying hello to others makes people's day and makes a difference in a channel. So thank you so much for everything you do. Seriously.
Thank you. I love being part of this community. It is fantastic. Horror fans are the nicest fans. Everyone thinks that we're all creepy and weird and hunkering down in our basements with our machetes. No, we're sitting on the
Yeah,
couches with our machetes. No.
yeah. Oh, it's
It's
so
been
true.
great. I have enjoyed every minute of the last 15 months, and I hope to enjoy 15 more and another 15 more. And it's just been fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, seriously. Um, all right, so our last category, so that I don't keep Rachel on all day here, is the finale. You know, what type of finale, if you were to give an example of a film, what would our finale kind of look like?
I mean, there are so many great finales out there, but I'm going to give a little bit of love to Black Christmas for this one because, like I talked about, I love a finale with a gut punch. But I also think
Mm,
with Black Christmas, that finale comes together so well because, Jess has had that through line of the issues that she's having with her boyfriend and the choices
hmm
that she's making. And, I don't want to give too much away just in
hmm
case people haven't seen it. But I think that her particular storyline comes together so well at the end and we're rooting for her so much. Like Jess is such a great final girl. She
She
really
is.
cares about, her sisters, she's trying to get them out of the house. When the police are saying get out of the house, she's not leaving without making sure that everyone's safe. And like I said, the culmination of the storyline with her boyfriend and her personal life choices and how that kind of comes together in the finale is so, so satisfying. And then you get that gut punch, and it is just like I said, I just sat there for 10 minutes just going, "No,
Yep.
why? What? Huh?" So, yeah, I think Black Christmas has everything that we've talked about in a finale, and it does,
hmm
it ramps up because, Jess is running around the house, she's trying to get away from Billy, you've got those great shots like the eye through the door or when he
Yes.
grabbed her by the hair and just all of these fantastic moments, and then, like I said, you get that great what you think is a fantastic payoff to her story, and then
hmm
you get that ending. And like you said earlier, Black Christmas is one of those films that I think a lot of people haven't seen, but they really should because it is so good. Like you said,
hmm
Carpenter took a lot of, notes from it. It does have a great mystery. The late great Olivia Hussey, I
Yes.
absolutely
Thank you.
adore her, and
Yep.
she was so so good in that. And yeah, and look, the most recent remake is crap, but the 2006 remake is at the very least cheesy, schlocky fun, and it has a
hmm
fun cast. So I would recommend the 2006 one if you're looking for a popcorn film, but
Yep.
definitely watch the 1974 film because it is so underrated, but it is
hmm
so, so good. So that's my
Yeah.
nomination for the finale. What about you, Knight?
Well, this is a great nomination, and I agree. And thank you so much for giving a shout out to the late great Olivia Hussey, who is no longer with us. Just recently passed away, which is so sad and such an underrated final girl. Again, people need to
Yes.
horror
Mhm.
fans, man. This is a classic, and it should be looked at as such. Um, and but I think that that finale is fantastic. I love it. The movies that came to my mind, TCM, of course,
Oh.
just it's such a bro. I've seen that.
Oh.
I don't even know how many times I've seen it. I've seen it a lot of times over the years, and it still gets me so pumped. What Sally goes through, and it's like a good 30, I think I timed it once. I think it's like a good 36 minutes, as far
Yeah,
as a
and it
finale.
doesn't let up.
No. If anything, it keeps ramping up
It does,
somehow.
doesn't it? Oh my god, poor
Somehow.
Sally. Oh
I
my
I was thinking to
god.
myself, man, I feel so bad for Marilyn Burns' eyes because, bro, that camera must
Yes.
have been like right there.
Mhm.
But but what she goes through and when she finally basically jumps out of the mouth of hell through that window, that's basically what that was. It's not over. It's not over. They're still coming after her. She's injured. She doesn't know where the hell she is. She could be on the moon for all we know. And it just keeps on going. And when she barely escapes, and you got Leatherface breakdancing, and she's just laughing and crying and screaming, like that's so visceral, so real. Like, and I think I don't think there's many movies that have even touched that type of feeling, you know what I'm saying? So TCM came into my mind for that aspect of it, but I also and I mentioned it a little while ago, I also thought of something like Candyman, and I thought about how sad I was at the end of that damn movie. I was actually I was jolted with the stinger with Helen and like, "Oh my god." But when they slowly the camera pulled into that portrait of her, it made me think of her journey in this movie and her connection to Candyman. It made me think of his story and why, although he was the villain, it was like I sympathized with him. And so I got
Yes.
all these emotions frigging me up, man. And
Mhm.
it's all wrapped in a feeling of sadness, kind of like, oh, and of course the music was a big part of that as well. So that finale came to my mind too. So look, let's just do this. This is going to be a crazy one for the last one. Let's just let's throw in all of them. We got Black, Black Christmas. Let me just
Yeah.
we got Black Christmas. We've got and I can't even type. We got Black Christmas, we got TCM,
TCM.
and we got Candyman.
See, I would have mentioned Candyman before, but I kind of err on the side of, is Candyman actually a slasher? I
I
always see it
know.
more, and I understand why people might say it's a slasher. I get it, but for
Yeah.
me, it's always been more of a gothic horror. It's very
Yeah.
Death and the Maiden, and the fact that he doesn't turn up for 40 minutes and his kill count isn't actually that high, and we
Right.
really only see one kill on screen. The
Mhm.
others we only see the aftermath. So while I understand why some people might say it's a slasher, I personally don't see it as a slasher. Otherwise, I would have
Mhm.
been mentioning it in like music and stuff like that because it's such a great film. But
Mhm.
that could be an
Mhm.
interesting conversation to have one day. Candyman,
Yeah.
slasher or not.
Yeah, no, that could be a good one. Absolutely. You made me think about that. And in the chat too, and this is so funny because a couple of movies had come to my mind, and I was also thinking this in my head as well. We've got Halloween 4, which I think is also it's just so good for an ending because of that stinger, the power
Yes.
of that stinger and the performance of Donald. If you get a
Mhm.
finale that can move you like that, then you're winning.
Talk about
And
a gut
also,
punch.
total
Oh,
gut punch. Who would have thought?
yeah.
I
Oh,
didn't see
man.
it coming.
No, no. Oh my
No,
god. And Luke and Donald Pleasance is just acting his little heart out there,
he is.
What?
He is.
He's
And also what it
so good.
means. And also what
Yes.
it means too, because he's
Mhm.
basically saying, nope, we're not gonna do this again. There won't be another Michael Myers. He's ready to make a choice. And look,
Yep.
you guys know I could rant about that all night, but real real quick, Nightfall coming in with a super chat. Thank you so much, bro. We appreciate you saying I love the Friday 13th 2 finale. Amy Steele was fantastic. She absolutely was. You guys
Is
know.
Pitchfork Girl?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
You gotta
yes.
love it. You gotta love it. You guys know I love Amy Steele. Jeff coming in also with a super chat. Thank you so much, Jeff, saying Halloween, the original, all you hear is the breathing. Friday 13th, the original, the little boy Jason jumping out.
Yes. Mm.
That's what started it for me, man. Friday 13th. I absolutely agree with you guys. No doubt at all. So this is what we have, guys. We've built basically our idea of what makes a slasher film good and also what it would kind of look like, as far as these different aspects. Having a killer that is similar to Michael, a story that is similar to Fear Street, mystery that is like the Scream films, specifically Scream 3, characters like Scream, the atmosphere and the scare factor of Halloween, the kills as far as the build up Black Christmas, the music of Fear Street, and a finale that is powerful or that just is a gut punch like Black Christmas or TCM and Candyman. So that's what it looks like. And I gotta admit, man, this was a lot of fun
I'd
building
watch
this.
this movie.
Yeah.
We
Oh
can call
yeah.
it fear the Halloween Christmas or something like that.
Wow. Maybe.
Scream if you fear the Halloween Black Christmas. Come up
Oh,
with
man.
something. Could be very bad.
It could be. Um, but
Ugh.
yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. So for you guys in the chat, first of all, thanks for hanging out with us. We had a lot of people here tonight. We appreciate that. Leave some comments. Let us know what you think about these things we talked about. What makes a good slasher film to you? And we can continue that conversation in the comments. As always, if you haven't hit the like button, please do. That helps us so very much. And also, if you haven't subscribed to Rachel's channel, it's been through the links in the chat, and we'll have it in the description as well. And obviously, Rachel's been here on the channel many times, so there's a reason for that. So make sure you go and support her as well. And Rachel, I'll see you backstage in a second, but just to say right here while we're live, thank you so much for doing this. This was a really fun exercise. It
It's
really
fun. Thank you
was.
for having me. And time just flew. It was awesome. I really love it.
Yeah, it really was fun, and time flew by, and we were able to craft something that was so linked to the present but also the past. This was a lot of fun. I really
Hmm.
dig it. So good night to all of you guys, and Scott, thank you so much, and Jack says I'm still here. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate that, and we will catch you guys next time. And as always, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace.